Do you ever ask yourself, how would my life be different if I had made different choices? Would I be happier? More wealthy? Here's a humorous novel that explores that question, venturing back to that magical time in the early 90s when grunge was taking over big hair bands. It was just when our hero, Amy Gare, began to face the real world. You Hawkeye fans just might enjoy the setting as well. Goodbye Def Leppard, I'll Miss Those Jeans by Steph Kramer can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers. Casmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Casmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Casmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at Casmium.com. Casmium, where sports technology sparks victory.
Thank you, Alex. Technical difficulties. We're all good now? Alex is telling me we're all good. Well, everybody. Our Iowa Hawkeyes did it. They played three-phase football for 4 quarters. 6 games into the season. Took us halfway through the year to get there. But they finally got there, and boy, was it good to see. I felt uneasy at times during Illinois State game, Troy game, Minnesota game. Obviously, they were down at half. Obviously, the Iowa State and Ohio State losses were tough to stomach. But that was an afternoon of really, really good football. Finally, really, really good football. Lots to get to today. We're going to be with you for hopefully about 2.5 hours today. Cory will be joining us a little bit later in the show. He had some personal obligations this morning, so he's currently watching the game. And as soon as he gets done watching, he will be joining us. No Coach Patterson today. We will have Coach Patterson soon, either for a show this week sometime or for Iowa Postgame again next week. The Hawkeyes did not start very quick in this game either, despite playing 4 really good quarters. Won the first quarter 7-0, but man, it felt like the defense was kind of feeling out Washington, kind of hanging on for dear life at times. Lots of that bend, don't break style, giving up 6, 8, 6, 5, 4, 6 yard plays over and over and over again. Couldn't get off the field. Washington had 2 7-minute drives in the first half, which is something that we just don't really see at Iowa, especially in Kinnick. But Phil Parker pitched a masterclass today in defensive adjustments. We've seen it over and over again. It really felt like he was feeling out Washington. Felt like he was kind of getting used to their play style, what Jed Fish wanted to do. And once he did, it was all Iowa. From that point on, Will Rogers really picked Iowa apart in the first half. Looked great. And even their freshman quarterback, Demond Williams Jr., came in and looked really good. Jonah Coleman, their big running back, was very, very difficult for Iowa to tackle. Lots of missed tackles, especially in the secondary. Pass rush was very unspectacular early on. Aaron Graves made a great play on the strip sack with his helmet, actually, that hit the elbow of Will Rogers. So that was a great play. But besides that, really didn't get home early in the first half. That came on late in the game. Secondary was not tackling very well. Castro missed tackles. Xavier Wampa missed tackles. Some of the other DBs missed tackles. But that was all cleaned up as the game went on, which was great to see. I mean, they couldn't get stops against Ohio State in the red zone. Couldn't get stops against anybody in the red zone. Actually, leading up to this game, opponents, I believe, were 8 for 8 in the red zone against Iowa for 8 touchdowns, which is just hard to believe. But today they were much better in the red zone, partially due to the fact that Washington did not have a reliable kicking game today, did not have a reliable kicker. That hurt them greatly. So we'll get to a couple of my thoughts really quick here. Take some callers, take some chats, and have a little bit of fun as we enjoy what was a really good, really easy to watch victory today for the Iowa Hawkeyes. We'll get to RTI Threads player of the game later in the game. Halfway through the first half, I was debating on throwing the entire special teams unit in for RTI Threads player of the game. Reese Dakin is improving, and he is improving really fast. Obviously, early in the season, they've missed Tory Taylor, but man, I believe it was a 55-yard punt and a 61-yard punt in the first half. that were just beautiful kicks, Tory Taylor-esque kicks. And not to mention the loss of Cooper DeJean as a gunner, which I think a lot of fans for other teams might laugh at, but Cooper DeJean made an impact as a gunner. And that kick coverage team today was really, really, really good. And we'll get to more on that later. Blocked field goal, the 2 punts I mentioned. Drew Stevens was perfect on the afternoon. And the 51-yarder that he made late would have been good from 61, I think. Just an impressive kick there. Caden Weegan had a couple of nice punt returns and a nice kick return to set the offense up with good field position. Special teams was absolutely phenomenal. It was Iowa-esque. It was what we've seen for years and years and years. It was really, really good to kind of tie the whole performance together, offense, defense, and special teams. Cade McNamara throws his first passing touchdown versus a Power 4 team since 2021. Cade was not asked to do very much today. I know he made a couple of nice throws, a couple of nice touchdowns to kind of, especially the second one to Dayton Howard was kind of salt in the wound for Washington at that point in the game. Game was kind of already salted away. But they didn't ask him to do much early on. He didn't make too many plays early, but he was decent on the plays that they asked him to make a play. A couple of nice layered throws over the middle of the field. Just, again, nothing while the game was in doubt. Only part of the performance in fact, the only part of the game that got me really irritated actually was when Cade rolled outside the pocket and missed Reese Vanderzee wide open for a touchdown. I mean, he was wide open if Cade would have made that throw. So that would have been a nice throw to make. And that's a throw that he will have to make later in the season if they want to get to where they want to get to. So somewhat hard to evaluate Cade overall. But good to see a couple of passing touchdowns against Power 4 teams. Again, had not thrown one in 3 years. So, all right. Got plenty of people in the queue here. Cory will be joining us later, as I said. But for now, let's get to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. One of our regulars, Alex. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was, after all of the wins, I think this season, I came away, happy that they won. But I don't think you or I felt good after the Troy game, after the Minnesota game. I mean, I know Minnesota was a good second half, but that Minnesota first half was really poor and really tough to watch. Even the Illinois State game early was pretty reminiscent of what we've seen in the past. So I was happy to watch a game that I felt good about from start to finish because I haven't done that yet this year.
Well, it just seemed like Randy DNU that stated it didn't start very fast, but they felt like they were still. They didn't feel like they were asleep at the wheel. They were trying things, and that one touchdown drive, it was 80 yards. They went 9 plays, 80 yards, which was a kind of a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay, now we're starting to see something, and then it was a good offensive performance. You said it, Cade didn't. They didn't ask Cade to do too much, and didn't have to. With Washington taking two drives that went over 7 minutes, I think one was closer to 8. Yeah, your offense doesn't get the ball that much, but so I mean, I think Cade just did what he needed to do. He had, like you said, a couple nice passes, missed one with Reese, and welcome to the Big Ten, or welcome to Iowa. Dayton Howard get his first catch and first touchdown all in one play.
Absolutely, that was great to see, especially the personal connection on this channel. Cory did an interview with Dayton when he committed or when he signed, I think, and really nice, personable guy. So that was cool to see.
Yeah, and it was nice to see Race Dakin. You said 55 and 61 yards, and he only punted twice. So I think that's always good to see when, hey, we have a good punter, but we only need to use them very seldomly because our offense is scoring points, whether it's field goals or touchdowns, and that's how we win games. And talking about the result of this game, everyone thought it was going to be really close, kind of tight battle. And I think I was very much like in 2000, and I might be going a little too far back on this, but like when Ricky Stainsey was here, 2010, 2011, I can't remember the year specifically, where they would look so flat.
9 and 10. Yeah.
Completely flat the first half, and they'd come out and just put on a show in the second half. So I think that's kind of what this Iowa team is that they're more of a second half team again, which if they could put up 40 points, they're going to beat most teams.
Yeah.
So and it's this Washington team too is not, everyone kind of was down on them at the start of the year with the loss of their head coach, and they were returning only, I think, 2 or 3 starters on both sides of the ball. But they showed that, like, hey, we're still a team to contend with, and I felt good about this win. I think going forward, outside of maybe Nebraska, I think Iowa fans should feel fairly confident in this offense and this defense of, being able to take control of the game and put games away and not have teams kind of come back late. But Caleb Johnson obviously is a beast. Going back to the Dayton Howard touchdown, I wish, no offense to you, I wish Cory was on here because I have been very critical. He has voiced this of Seth Anderson's absence.
Yeah,
he did see the field today, and he got a good catch. I think it was on a 3rd down pickup, and you can note that when he comes on and says, I'm not going to say, I was wrong. I thought he would probably, continue the year being injured with soft tissue and then hit the transfer portal. He's stuck in there. He still may hit the transfer portal at the end of the year, depending on how things go. But it was nice to see him out there. And I think Iowa, as much as we didn't want Cade to do too much, I think it's better for us to have wide receivers. Jacob Gill was completely absent today too, in terms of which I think if you really maybe think about it, that was Iowa's one true threat at wide receivers, Jacob Gill. So teams will recognize that and say, okay, we need to really cover this guy. And I think through the next 5 games going into Nebraska is we need to be able to spread the ball, not just to Jacob Gill, to Reese Vanderzee, to our tight ends, and then obviously Seth Anderson, maybe Dwight Howard thrown in there, something like that, to show like, hey, we may not have a bust out wide receiver, but someone we can get the ball to and get first downs and get good chunk plays. So that way, then that defense now has to cover more of the field as opposed to, okay, they have Caleb Johnson in there, we're going to stack 8-9 guys in the box. We just don't trust your pass game. So I think that's the motion going forward. And then I'll get off here. I didn't have too much because it was a good performance by Iowa. You talked about the long drives for Washington, and Iowa's kind of making the team to make the team make mistakes. Make them drive the length of the field. Washington is a great example of a team that doesn't make too many mistakes. They were one of the fewest turnover teams coming into this game, and they had two, I believe, 2 in the first half. And then, and they weren't great on the penalties. They were pretty penalized, and they only had 6 this game for only 55 yards. So I think that bodes well too for Iowa. The next against Michigan State, they're not a clean team in terms of turnovers and penalties. So I think we should feel fairly confident. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I believe that with the 2 field goals, now Iowa had one and then Washington had one at the end of the half. The fact is that college football is one of the biggest revenue drivers for a lot of networks. And we don't have, they just got the technology for the quarterbacks and then usually the Mike linebacker to have something so they can communicate with their coordinator. But we still have not yet figured out how to tell if a ball is inside the upright or not. We have to go off of a guy looking up, and trying to make that decision. And he was even like,
It took them a couple seconds to even decide. They're kind of like looking at each other like, I don't know.
This Big Ten refs crew struggled today. I feel like they missed a lot of calls.
I have a question for, and this is maybe something the chat can answer, or you, Alex, if you saw this. I did see on Twitter, and again, we don't.
This was the Big Ten ref that they did for Iowa, Minnesota last year.
Yeah, is that the case?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, all right. I'll let that sit where it sits,
but yeah. So I think we need to. And I know in the NFL the goalposts are taller, so maybe we just need to implement that. The problem, I guess, would be that when you have a Vanderbilt beat Alabama, one of your goalposts is going away. So
yeah, or both. At least one of them's going away and going in whatever the nearest river is.
Yeah. So, I think it was a good game by Iowa. I think, they started a little slow, but they were never really I don't think they trailed at all in this game. I think they led from wire to wire outside of, being tied. But so I think I think Iowa fans need to feel good about this. It feels like this team's now finally put it together. I think obviously work on a few things, making sure we get our wide receivers involved, tight ends. What maybe I don't know if you know this. Do you know the update on Estranga? Why was he out? Because I didn't see anything about that.
It was I can't remember the type of injury, but it wasn't supposed to be serious. I think he's supposed to be back in the next couple of weeks. I could be wrong, but I think he's supposed to be back relatively quickly.
Which is good because I think Iowa really does better when Lachey and Estranga, because they're both really tight ends you have to really kind of worry about.
Two very physical tight ends, two very physically demanding tight ends to cover.
So I think over the next 5 weeks, obviously, game plan for Michigan State starts now. We need to start looking at wide receivers, getting more wide receiver involvement to make teams have to cover the entire field, because then that makes just Caleb Johnson's day a lot easier, makes Cade's day a lot easier. It just makes the whole game a little less heart pounding, I guess. So
yeah,
but
absolutely.
I appreciate taking the call.
Absolutely. If you do want to hang around and confront Cory later on, I think he'll be on in about hopefully 30 minutes or so here. So.
I may not be around, so you can definitely pass the word that says Alex talked about Seth Anderson. He was happy to see him back, and I was wrong. So
I'll cede the floor to Cory and see what he has to say.
You'll probably laugh, and and if he decides to do another one on Sunday, I'll jump on and eat crow then.
Absolutely. Well, I have a feeling he's going to come after me too, because I came out pretty strong after the Ohio State game and said Iowa would not win out. So I
would say if Ohio State throttles Oregon, I think we can kind of chalk that game up. It's just Ohio State being Ohio State at that point.
Well, they currently have the best odds to win the national championship. They showed that on the broadcast. They're significant. They're not favorites against the field, obviously, but they've got like a 25-30%
200 or something like that.
Yeah, plus 200.
So, but yeah, I think if they throttle Oregon, it's going to be like, okay, we can kind of throw that game out. Obviously, the Iowa State game still, burns a little bit, but
yeah,
can't go back. Got to go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for calling in, Alex. We will talk to you soon.
Yep, appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night. All right. If you want a better quality snack for game day or any day, check out what they offer at iowasmokehouse.com. Iowa Smokehouse offers a full lineup sure to satisfy you and your family's snacking needs, whether it's thick and tender cuts of beef jerky, flavorful meat sticks, or delicious steak bites, or even ketchup and barbecue sauces. You will never need to look anywhere else. Tasting is believing. Visit iowasmokehouse.com. That's iowasmokehouse.com and use code Hawkeyes for 15% off your next order. All right, we will continue moving on here. Great to hear from Alex as always. Iowa Smokehouse call-in line is open, and that link I believe is in the description. If you'd like to hop in and talk football, talk Iowa's win over Washington 40-16, wire-to-wire win, as Alex pointed out. That link will be in the description, so feel free to call in, and we will get your thoughts on the game. Let's go to our Iowa RTI Threads player of the game, and I really wanted to choose somebody else other than Caleb Johnson today, purely because we've had Caleb Johnson, I believe, every week of the season so far, or if not close to it, maybe all but one this season. But you just can't choose anybody else at this point. I mean, he had 21 attempts, I think 3 catches, so 24 touches overall for 188 total yards and 3 touchdowns. And we'll get Cory's thoughts on this later, but he actually accounted for more points than Washington did today, in my opinion, because he had 3 touchdowns. He also basically carried Iowa to a field goal at the end of the first half. I was about to flick the game over, check on some other games before halftime quickly, because I figured Iowa was just going to run the clock out. And they do run the ball up the left side of the line. And of course, Caleb Johnson bursts it for, what was it, a 50-yard run or 40-yard run to get into Washington territory and basically set up the field goal. And the note that I took down from this, anybody that watched our show last week will appreciate this, I think. There was one criticism that Coach Patterson had of Caleb Johnson last week, and I'll get Cory's thoughts on this later. But Coach Patterson, there was a play last week that Caleb Johnson ran about 25 yards. He broke free. It was one of the few plays that he broke free on. and he ran down the sideline, and he had a one-on-one with a Ohio State defender, and he kind of willingly ran out of bounds. He kind of just took the yardage gain, ran out of bounds, and moved on to the next play. But Coach Patterson said, I would love to see him cut back into the field and try to take that defender on, as opposed to just accepting that he's going to be run out of bounds. And on that run at the end of the half, he did exactly what Coach Patterson wanted. So I saw that. That made me happy. It's great to see Caleb actually fight for more yardage there, because obviously the 20-yard gain would have been great, but he cut it back and got another 10, 15 yards after the cut. So that was great to see. Really fun to see his progression this year. He is not going to catch Ashton Jeanty unless Ashton Jeanty gets hurt. For Heisman, for Doak Walker, he will be a finalist for at least for the Doak. But man, he is making a very strong case at this point that he is the second best back in the country. Rough Rider says this feels so much better than last week. I completely agree. That was a much easier game to watch than previous weeks. It was much. My heart rate was much lower for the duration of this week's game than it has been in weeks past. And to go along with that, Caleb Johnson, RTI Threads Player of the Game today. Credit to the offensive line in the run game. I didn't think the offensive line was very good in the pass game. I don't think they protected Cade McNamara very well. But there was a lot of run plays today that were blocked for 4 to 6 yards. And Coach Patterson talks about this all the time, where it's important to have backs that when you block the play for 2, they get 6, or when you block the play for 4, they get 8. And Caleb's shown that he can do that this year. He's shown that he can get more yards than what the play was blocked for, as opposed to years prior where Caleb went down for a lot of 2-3 yard gains, and then he would break a 25-yard gain when the play was blocked for 25 yards. But there were a lot of plays today that were blocked for 4, 5, 6 yards, which is great to see from the offensive line. Really good push. I don't know how Washington's defensive line ranks against the rest of the Big Ten. Probably not super high. But man, there were a lot of plays, even late in the game when they had some backup offensive linemen in, where they were just getting push after push after push. And that was really good to see. Again, Iowa Smokehouse call-in line is down below in the description. Please slide into the queue here, and we'll get your thoughts on the game, as well as thoughts on Iowa moving forward, because they now have 6 very winnable and 6 very consequential games coming up. All right. Shop RTI Threads, Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer, who made a play today. Got to see the field a little bit. They have their merchandise on rtithreads.com. Check that out. They're a great sponsor of this show, help things keep moving here. So shop RTI Threads. That's Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer, all have their merchandise on rtithreads.com. Check them out before the end of the season this year to get some Hawkeye merchandise. All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. James, welcome to the show.
Kyle, how you doing? It's been a while since I've talked to you, because I haven't been around when you've been around. But First off, obviously, it's a good win. Any win's a good win, but obviously the win that way to go. But the one question, I sent this to Cory, and obviously I didn't know Cory was going to be on, but if the field goal that first off, I thought we couldn't challenge anything after 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good point. There were a couple of oopsies there, because I think Kirk challenged the play thinking he could challenge whether the field goal was good, right? Surely,
I thought you couldn't challenge after 2 minutes. Is the whole question. I thought it was coaches challenge after 2 minutes.
Well, he was challenged. I agree with you. I don't think you can challenge inside 2 minutes. So I think they messed that up, and then they also messed up. I mean, Kirk challenged thinking he was challenging whether the field goal was good or not. But when Kirk threw the challenge, they went to the booth and they reviewed, and they realized Kirk can't challenge whether the field goal is good. He can only challenge whether they had the opportunity to review the play, right? Because you can't review the play unless the ball's below the upright. So Kirk ends up challenging, thinking he might get the 3 points back, and basically all he does is waste a timeout because it was clear that the ball was above the.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think the timeout shouldn't even be wasted in the fact of not even that. First off, I thought you couldn't even challenge after 2 minutes. I thought that was something. Second off, if it's not reviewable, I didn't understand why we lost our timeout. But
yeah, I don't get that. That whole thing was a mess. I think the refs, once they went to the booth, they were probably told at that point that they had to correct the mistake, because it didn't look like they knew what they were doing. Like the rules official, the rules expert that they had, calling the game with the announcers when he was
Yeah.
brought in. He was frustrated because he's like, guys, we can't review this. This is not.
Yeah, but I said to Cory, how did they not know that, right? Like, you're coaching a Big Ten game. You're reffing a Big Ten game. You should know that you can't challenge that.
Those are the type of things that I think as a viewer frustrates you about the about refereeing crews, because if they get a split second call wrong, I think that's one thing. If you just flat out don't know a rule and you make an incorrect call that way, like, you know what I mean? Like, this was something that, like, it was just a matter of whether or not they knew the rule, and they didn't know the rule. That was the tough part. Like, if they miss a pass interference call that's very close, then we get frustrated, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
That was tough. Tough.
For sure. That was the only question I had. I was just confused how he could even challenge after 2 minutes. But I feel like in the second half, we really got going on the fact of that Dayton Howard touchdown doesn't happen without what Caleb does, and the fact of he opened that up. You know what I mean? You have to focus on him so much that you get that passing game going. And I knew he was wide open right away. I was hoping Caleb was going to hit him. I saw him when he cut inside. I was like, he's wide open. I just didn't know if Caleb was going to get there, because I know sometimes he throws those off a little bit sometimes. But once he hit him, I was glad he got a touchdown, and it's good to see on your first catch too. And I feel like, you might pass the ball 15 times, but it's kind of like the same as Minnesota, where you didn't really need to. You got up by so much, you don't really need to pass the ball. You just run the ball. But I don't know how good that's going to be for the future, because you're going to get in those games where you're going to need to pass the ball. And if you haven't passed the ball in a lot of these games, how is that going to be? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were. I mean, at the very least, they got a few repetitions in late. I mean, they were completely inconsequential at that point in the game. But man,
for sure,
I do continue to wait for a team to just load the box on Iowa. I mean, I don't know why Washington didn't.
I know. I think if you do, that's the best way to beat us, is just stack the box and like make Cade try to beat you. And but I feel like. I also don't understand why Brennan didn't go in that second to last drive.
Yeah.
When I was like 10 minutes left, whatever. Why is Brennan not in the game?
I don't know. This is a question that we've asked over and over and over again. And maybe it had something to do with the fact that he almost made a completely idiotic decision on the goal line early. I mean, that was
that's probably has something to do with it. But
that was like Brendan Sullivan's best Will Levis impression, wasn't it? That was.
I'm just glad he was down at least. I was like, I thought he was down when I first saw it, and I was like, why would you just throw that? Like, what are you doing? But
especially in the red zone. I mean,
for sure.
That's going to be one they're gonna sit down and have a talk about that one, I'm sure, after the game.
Like you said, the schedule is kind of Michigan State on the road is going to be a little tough, but if you play the way you did today, and the defense. The first two drives, and I've noticed this about the defense the last couple of years, and I don't think people have either. Usually the first drive, they don't give up points sometimes, but they always do give up yards, at least on the first drive. Yeah. First or second drive, they always give up yards, because then they have to settle in and see what a team's going to do, it seems like, and then they settle in, if that makes sense. Like, they always seem to do that, where, like, they give up yards, and then they settle in and see what they're going to do, and then they're fine after that, because they just take time to settle in for them sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what it looked like today, and it was a bigger version, I guess, of what normally happens because they didn't know Washington, but to me, it just looked like, for the first half or first quarter, basically, we're going to sit back. We're going to see what you throw at us, but we're going to make sure we don't give up any big plays. Like, if you want to throw your best stuff at us to get 8 yards and 10 yards and 6 yards and 7 yards, go right ahead. We'll try that, and we'll accept that, and we'll try to stop you. But then after that, when they got some reads on what they were doing, then they kind of clamped down. But they were keeping everything out in front of them. The DBs were so much that they were just. I mean, there was 5-yard cushions everywhere, like all over the field. It looked like every receiver was open on short routes.
For sure. And I don't know if you noticed some of the changes they kind of made. Obviously, I like Deshaun Lee. I feel like it's a weird combination of what do you do at second corner spot, right? To play TJ a little bit after that touchdown. I think he didn't turn his head around. I think if he turned his head around, maybe it would have been different too. Deshaun didn't even turn his head around. Deshaun would literally just like try to play the receiver, didn't turn around at all. But I feel like that's also interesting. The one thing I don't know if anybody else noticed is you said Lutmer played, but I don't know if you noticed they took Kyler Fisher out for Lutmer to play because they kept running stuff across the middle of the field. So they put Lutmer in to try to stop them from keep throwing across the middle of the field, because that's what they were killing us with a lot of times, was just we have 3 linebackers sitting there and they just run across the middle of the field, and we have the speed to, like, Kyler Fisher didn't have the speed to keep up with them, going sideline to sideline. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, I mean, and really all over the field today, like the adjustments that were made. And the other, one thing I want to talk to Cory about was Xavier Wampa makes that great play on special teams as a gunner, and all of a sudden he's reengaged again. I don't understand. I mean, I'm glad he's reengaged, but like he was one of the ones I think that led that.
Also,
he made that stop, and then after that you could see. I mean, he was hitting people harder. Number one, that's obvious, but number two, he's in the secondary and you can see him calling out stuff. You can see him yelling at other DBs when he's recognizing routes and stuff. And it's like when he got burned against Iowa State and from that point on until today, he was not doing that kind of stuff. Like he was not vocal. There was no energy. There was no leadership, it looked like. And he makes that great play. He gets excited. And it looked like from that point on, he was back on. So hopefully that's an indication of the rest of the season because Iowa needs better safety and better DB play.
For sure, and even Cone, I think we don't realize what Cone did today. Cone played really well as well, and I feel like in that aspect too, that might be why Xavier's been a little bit off and on because he hasn't played as much as he usually does, right? And I'm not saying he was great last year. I'm not saying that by any means, but I'm saying like after that State game, they kind of went with a little bit more Cone, where they would play Cone in some possessions and then play X in other possessions, play Cone in some possessions, play X in other possessions. Don't, and sometimes it does take time to get used to, when you're not always out there, when you're used to always being out there, if that makes sense. But I do agree with you. After that hit, he was way more different. I was like, where was this Xavier Wampa been the whole time, or the whole rest of the year that's been before? But it's good to see a lot of those guys get playing time too. And even the linebackers look good. I think Carson Sharp looked good too, in his limited time as well. So I feel like those are guys you have to lean on for sure. And I know obviously you have this year too, but you lose a lot of those guys. So you want to see some of the guys get playing time and some of those guys kind of step up when they need to step up as well. But I feel like the second cornerback still should be a question, obviously. And I'm not saying Deshaun Lee not playing well. It's just TJ Hall didn't look good when TJ Hall was in there. Deshaun Lee didn't look good when Deshaun Lee was in there. So it's going to be weird to see what they do. And obviously, I don't know what Michigan State has for wide receivers, but I don't know.
It's always tricky. I mean, to me too, like when you talk about the second DB, like I wouldn't even say today that Deshaun Lee looked bad.
No, he didn't. He did that one play kind of made me mad because he didn't turn his head around. If he would turn his head around, and he caught it, I would have been mad. But he didn't turn his head around at all. He just tried to play the defender or the wide receiver the whole time. I'm like, you got to at least try to make an effort to make it.
Yeah, it's not even like again, like he's not playing badly, but he's playing the difference in the level that he and Jamari Harris is playing at, or Jamari Harris and whoever the other second corner would be if they were swapping people in and out, whether it be Lee or Nestor or whoever, or TJ Hall. It's the play calling. I mean, they called that play and. There's no read on it. It's basically just toss it up to the corner of the end zone, and we're going at Deshaun Lee in one-on-one, and we're going to pick on him. Like that's the part about it that bothers me. Not that Deshaun Lee is even that bad, but it's that there's a big enough gap there as a play caller that like you're comfortable with just throwing the ball up in his direction, and you're good with whatever happens.
True, but the one thing I think as our fans you kind of got to think about too, and I know I'm taking up your time, sorry, but the one thing you got to think about is kind of like the Desmond King situation. I'm not comparing Jamari to Desmond at all, right? But what did they not do when Desmond King was playing his senior year? They didn't throw it his way. They don't throw Jamari's way a lot, right? So that makes the other side vulnerable, and I feel like maybe that might make them better for you. Like we don't realize it this year. Maybe they're not playing that well this year, but that might make them better for the future because they keep getting the shots taken at them. Like they keep getting the deep balls thrown at them or the touchdown passes thrown on them. Like that might make them better for the future because they're afraid to throw Jamari's way. And you see what happens when they do throw Jamari's way with that big pick for the nice return. So I feel like that's going to keep happening, like you said, more and more this year. Where the one thing I want to see is kind of do, and I know they have other weapons, obviously. They have Giles Jackson. They had other weapons other than that one guy. But I feel like if we play a team that has one good guy, maybe you have Jamari travel. And I know they don't do that, but Jamari is your best guy, and they're afraid to throw it to him. So maybe if you have Jamari guard their best guy and travel, that might take that guy out of the game.
Yeah. See, the interesting thing for me is when we talk about Jamari Harris, because he's having a great year so far, is two things. Number one, last year, Jamari was in TJ Hall's position or was in Deshaun Lee's position because you had Cooper DeJean on the other side of the field and there was nobody challenging his side of the field. And then he comes, then you come back to the other side of the field and that's Jamari. And now you fast forward to this year, Jamari's better than he was last year. I think everybody recognizes that. But now he's the guy and the other, I don't know. I find that a little bit interesting. And yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting place to be as a defense. I think, and Coach Patterson has talked about this, time and time again, I think on the show over the course of the last couple of years. When you have a very good wide receiver as the other team's best wide receiver, you can put Jamari on him and perhaps Jamari can take him out of the game. And then you take your chances with the other two. What Coach Patterson has said as well is if you take the best receiver on the other team and they're a freak like Jeremiah from Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith, and you put Jamari on him, that does not guarantee that wide receiver is out of the game, right?
Yeah.
So if you face somebody of that caliber, I think you take Jamari off of that person.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I'm saying, like, in a game like this, I feel like you could
In a
take
game
away
like
their best weapon.
absolutely, yeah.
Because
Washington
he's
did not have
as
a
good.
wide receiver that was ever
Yeah.
going to torch Jamari Harris. They didn't have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but also I understand the way we play defense, we don't really play a lot of man. So having to travel kind of doesn't make sense in the fact of you're playing the same principles on either side. But I feel like Jamari knows how to make the break on the ball better when it's getting thrown his way anyway. It's not like a Deshaun Lee or TJ Hull or John Nestor does, obviously, because he's been there so long. So that might make a difference. But one more thing before I get off is tackling on that one big play. I seen X and Sebastian Castro just throw their shoulder at the dude. They didn't even try to tackle him. They literally just threw their shoulder at him. And I'm like, that's not how you tackle somebody. You can't just go to him, somebody throw your shoulder at him. Like, none of them even used their hands. They just said, oh, here's a shoulder. Like, but I do like that they said it. And I don't know if you listened to that at halftime. The lady, whoever the girl was talking, she's like, Kirk said we need to do a better job tackling. And in the second half, I do feel like they did a lot better job tackling in the second half after he said that. So.
Yeah. I felt like even after the first quarter and a half, like I thought Kirk, it looked like Kirk addressed something there midway through the first quarter. And it looked like from even that point on, they were better, but definitely from halftime on, like the tackling in the first quarter was not good. Like I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me on how many tackles they missed, but I bet it was 5 or 6 in the first half. And then in the second half, it was a lot more airtight. And to your point about some of the secondary stuff, like Wampa and Cohen Entringer combined for 17 tackles today. Xavier Wampa has been MIA on a lot of stat sheets. And for a lot of teams, that's a good thing when your safety's MIA in terms of tackles, because your safety's not, tackling wide receivers that are way down the field or running backs that have broken through to the secondary. But today, that 17 tackles by the back end was not, and Schulte had 6 as well. So I guess the 3 of them combined for 23. That was not indicative of Washington necessarily getting down the field. Like Xavier did come up and stop the run a little bit. Quinn Schulte came up and stopped the run a little bit. Like they were up and kind of in the muck and kind of throwing their weight around a little bit. So that was really good to see.
No, yeah, for sure. And obviously I don't think anybody expected 40. Well, it's 40-16, but it was pretty much 40-10. We just gave a garbage time touchdown. Yeah. But I don't think anybody really expected that kind of thing. I thought it was going to be a dogfight. And even at the first possession, I thought it would be dogfight. But I'm just glad the way we looked. And I feel like you said earlier, it was a full 4 quarters. Like I feel like they played. Maybe if you don't want to say the first quarter, still a full 3 quarters is better than a full half. And that's something we got to look at too. And hopefully we can keep up against Michigan. And as you go 2 weeks on Lansing, which is never that great, but it's a night game, so you never know what can happen. But we just got to keep playing our football, and I think we'll be perfectly fine for the rest of the year. At least perfectly fine in the fact that we'll be in every game is what I mean. We should win every game, obviously, but you never know what can happen. But we'll have a chance to win every game from here.
They're not gonna get blown out by any team on their
schedule.
schedule. There's not a team on there that's gonna blow them out.
Yeah, but all right, I'll talk to you later. Enjoy the night and go Hawks.
Absolutely. Thank you to James for calling in. Always good fun to talk to James. A lot of good thoughts there on the defense. That was good conversation. I enjoyed that. Again, great to see Xavier Wampa finally show up for a game this year. We were kind of getting on him earlier in the season about lack of effort after the Iowa State, the blown coverage against Iowa State that possibly cost them the game there. So that was good to see. Jay Higgins also threw his weight around. So did Nick Jackson. They combined for 25 tackles. Jay Higgins had 14 of them by himself, 5 solo. So he was a part of a lot of gang tackling, but I thought he played another really solid game. No turnovers for him today, but another just very, very solid Jay Higgins game. That's the one part of the defense. And I know we called it coming into the season, but it's the one part of the defense that I felt really, really good about from start to finish. Is I know Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins are going to show up every single week. They're going to captain the defense. They're going to quarterback the defense, and they're going to try to get everybody where they need to be. So really, really good to have that nucleus on your team, as Iowa has had over and over again with Jack Campbell and several other linebackers. Before that. Again, let's go back to our RTI Threads player of the game. It is Caleb Johnson. We'll talk about Caleb more later on in the show when Cory gets here, I'm sure. But again, 21 attempts, 188 total yards, and 3 touchdowns. Man, does he continue to impress, and has just taken a ginormous leap this season for Iowa, and it has been much needed. Iowa defeats Washington 40-16. I believe the spread in this game was 2 points. It was Iowa minus 2.5. So Iowa easily covering the spread. This was expected to be a tight game. In fact, that line would even suggest that the odds makers like Washington a little bit more on a neutral field, which is interesting. Over under as well, 41.5 for this game. Iowa almost covered by themselves, so that was nice to see. I'm coming around to Tim Lester quite a bit. I was skeptical when they hired him a little bit. I did talk to him in person. That helped make me feel a little bit better. Really good man. Seemed to have some good ideas. Obviously knows a lot about football. Has coached on every level. But he's starting to make a believer out of me. I'm not saying that they're going to be top 50 in offense or top 30 in offense or whatever. May not even be top 70, but they've taken a seismic leap. And when he said they were going to cut the total offense numbers in half, I think he's maybe not quite on track to do that because it's a very ambitious goal, but he's not far away. And it's been a welcome sight. I mean, we've dropped 40 points now. And 40 points are almost 40 points in multiple games today. Dropped 40 against Illinois State, dropped 38 against Troy, dropped 40 against Washington, dropped 31 against Minnesota. They're scoring a lot more points than we're accustomed to seeing them score. So hopefully bodes well for them for the rest of the season. Lots of stuff still to get to. Cory will be joining us here relatively shortly. If you didn't catch the beginning of the show, Cory had some obligations earlier this morning, so he started watching the game around 1 or 1:30. So just making sure that he's seen all his film before he gets here to talk football. So he should be joining us fairly soon in the next half an hour, I would say. We'll still be with you for at least another hour as we talk Iowa's 40-16 victory over the Washington Huskies. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Got OS for Hawks. How we doing, OS for Hawks?
I'm doing well, Kyle. Can you hear me? Okay.
I sure can. What'd you think of
Good.
today's game?
I wanted to talk about the field goal make quickly. Yeah. And the rules are such, Ferentz actually could not challenge that play. Yeah. But I think what happened is I think Ferentz knew the rules once good enough. Because if you remember when the ref came out on the field, when he called it, he said the ball went over the upright. And I wonder if Ferentz challenged whether the ball didn't go over the upright. If that's what he challenged, that allowed him to challenge it. Do you get what I'm saying? What
my interpretation of that situation was, and I'd love to hear Coach Patterson's thoughts on this too, whether or not this is something that Kirk absolutely would have known. But what it looked like to me was Kirk was challenging, thinking that they would reverse the call of the field goal being good and not knowing that you couldn't challenge that part of it. And then the refs accepted the challenge and then went to the booth and realized they couldn't overturn that part of the call. And then went, I don't know that, I mean, it was pretty obvious that the ball went over the field goal, right? It was pretty obvious it went over the upright.
I'd be hard pressed to believe that KF doesn't know that rule.
Yeah,
to be quite honest with you. That's why I thought maybe he challenged whether it went over or not, because he knew he couldn't. Anyway, the one thing I did want to bring up, because watching it on TV, if you notice the guy standing under the field goal, under that upright where the ball went over, he was not looking up. He was not looking up at all. How do you make a call if you're not looking up to see where the ball's at? Well, that's the one thing that I wanted to bring up.
And he immediately looked right, because he was like, it was his upright, and he was looking to the other guy to see, did it go over his upright? And it's like, dude, he's responsible for that upright anyways.
I was just bringing it up because I wanted to point out, I thought as far as a referee crew, this was probably one of the worst referee crews of any game that I've seen this year, to be quite honest. And I don't like harping on refs, because I think that they do a tremendous job most of the time.
Well, I don't mind harping on a referee crew that includes Tim O'Day personally. I'm not a big fan of his.
A couple of other things I wanted to bring up is I know a lot of people in the chat like to harp on Cade quite a bit, and I got one small thing that I wanted to bring up in the game that I saw. Cade McNamara on one of Caleb Johnson's touchdown runs that in the fourth quarter, Cade carried out a naked bootleg fake. And if
Yeah.
you watch the play, that froze the defensive end and gave Caleb the touchdown. There's no doubt about it. And that's all because Cade made that good fake.
Mm-hmm.
And it froze him and he scored a touchdown. So for all those haters out there of Cade McNamara, that's something that I saw that I wanted to bring up. You talked about Dakin hitting a couple of bombs in that first half. My goodness. And Stevens was just
Drew
good
Stevens
all
has
day.
a cannon of a leg. He has a cannon of a leg.
He's missed one 51-yarder this year.
And it was by a foot.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up, there's that flea flicker Washington ran early in the game.
Yeah.
If they didn't underthrow that, we get burned for a touchdown.
That's a touchdown.
That was a touchdown all the way.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you were talking about, Lester, and whether you believe in Lester, the touchdown in the second quarter to Caleb, that touchdown pass you're talking about being the first one against a Power 5. I thought that was a tremendous play call by Lester at that point in the game. Yeah. And it was huge.
And can I just say in general, by the way, I like the route trees. I like what they're doing in the passing game, like as far as getting guys open. There is so much more space for wide receivers now. They're not throwing, Cade's not having to throw all the time to wide receivers with DBs draped all over them like they were last year.
Yep. And then the other thing we were talking about defense. You guys are talking about how good the defense is. I am not knocking that we didn't play great defense today. Yeah. But Washington put almost 400 yards up on Iowa. I think it was like 393 for the game. They put up more yards than we did today. The big statistic for the defense today was Washington was only 5 of 15 on third down.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah. That was a huge part of the.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at least 3 or 4 of those conversions were on the first 2 drives, right? So, I mean, they were essentially like one of 9 or one of 10 the rest of the game after that.
Yes, and they were 50% on fourth down today. They were 3 of 6 on fourth down, and a couple of those conversions were late game, late drive when they scored. And it was the one last thing that I wanted to bring up is I have to say this: we have to be thankful that both of the tackles for Washington started their first game today.
Yeah,
because a lot of what the turnovers and stuff were caused by defensive pressure that we were getting on the quarterback. And I'm not discounting how good we got pressure, but I'm just saying that having two tackles starting their first game. I think their one tackle who's played before was hurt and he was on the sideline, and then they started another one. That they just mentioned that in the broadcast. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Aaron Graves, after the first maybe 20 minutes of the game or first 18 minutes of the game, Aaron Graves did basically whatever he wanted against those tackles.
And I just got one last thing, and I know you got a bunch of people that want to get on, so I was just going to say, Caleb Johnson is the best Iowa running back I've seen since Sean Green. And I've seen quite a few. I mean, I've seen him all the way back to Tavian Banks and that. And Caleb is a real deal. And I was down on Caleb last season because I didn't see what I considered that extra effort. But you see it this year. You see him finishing upfield rather than getting pushed back most of the time. And across the board, I thought Iowa just played a very good game today. And go Hawks. Thanks for taking my call.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for calling in, Us for Hawks. Yeah, and to add to that point, just kind of confirming some of Caleb's stats so far. But Sean Green for his Iowa season that made him Sean Green in Iowa City had 1,850 yards and 20 touchdowns. And Caleb Johnson, let's see here if we've got updated numbers from today too. So Caleb Johnson is on 12 touchdowns so far through 6 games. and he is on about 920 total yards. So he is literally on pace to have basically a carbon copy of the season that Sean Green had in 2008. So that's a good call. 920-ish yards for Caleb. In fact, I can confirm that number right now. 771 plus his 166 that he had today. That's 937. 937 total yards on the year to go with 12 touchdowns. And he is averaging 7.9 yards per carry. I mean, that is just ridiculous and is about double the number that Iowa has averaged the last couple of years. I want to address a couple of things here that are in the chat. Well, the first point is on the Cade bootleg that we're just discussing there with OS for Hawks. The ironic thing about that comment is that, last year when Cade was hurt, I believe it was Kirk that said in a press conference something along the lines of, okay, he's going to play, but QB sneaks are out and naked bootlegs out. Everybody in our call line and our chat went nuts because everybody said, well, that's half of Iowa's offense gone right there. The fact that he can do that is important, not from a skill perspective, but from an injury perspective. The fact that he's capable of naked bootlegging and making plays like that. And OS for Hawks is absolutely right. That play call against the pressure of Washington on the screen pass to Caleb Johnson was absolutely beautiful. It was a great play call, perfectly timed. And there were 3 or 4 play calls. I think Phil Parker brought pressure at just the perfect moments in the third quarter. I mean, there were a couple of times. It was Nick Jackson that got sent at just the perfect time in the third quarter there. And I think was it Wampa or Schulte was sent at another point. But anyways, there were a couple times that I sat back and said, man, that was a well-timed play call from both coordinators today. That was a much better coaching job than I think was done against Minnesota or Ohio State for sure. So for what it's worth, big improvements there. I want to provide a couple of updates in case people are not following along with other games that are going on. Obviously, Northwestern is on Iowa's schedule later in the year. They beat Maryland last night, 37-10. They're now 3-3, looking a little bit better. Wisconsin just finished absolutely drilling Rutgers 42-7 at Camp Randall, and they are now 4-2 on the season. So that game looks to be a little bit more challenging than what the odds makers had it at before that game. Wisconsin 4-2 again. That includes a loss to Alabama and USC. So hardly 2 bad losses on the season for Wisconsin. Illinois not on Iowa's schedule this year with the abolition of the divisions, but Illinois currently up 24-3 on Purdue. They're looking to move to 5-1 on the season with their only loss at Penn State. Speaking of Penn State, the 4th-ranked team in the country at 5-0, are in USC right now at the Coliseum. USC up 20-6 at halftime. So Penn State's Big Ten hopes are dwindling in the Coliseum today. A couple of other big games around the country that we'll get to real quick here. Texas up 21-3 on Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Notre Dame up 21-7 on Stanford. BYU up 14-7 on Arizona. Georgia up 13-3 on Mississippi State early. And of course, the big one later today, Ohio State plays Oregon at 6:30 on NBC Peacock in Eugene. That'll be obviously a game that we've been looking forward to all year. So plenty of great football today, plenty to look forward to after the show today. Again, if you missed us at the beginning of the show, Cory Brada will be joining us in just a moment. He is finishing up watching the game, and I would expect to see him in the queue any minute now. So Cory Brada will be joining us very shortly. I'm going to get a couple of take a quick break here, get a couple of reads in, and then we'll be right back with you. Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson is proudly presented by Brad Van Meter at State Farm in Des Moines. Call Brad for a free quote on auto, life, renters, and even homeowners insurance at 515-256-6480 or visit bradvanmeter.com. That's 515-256-6480 or bradvanmeter.com. Again, That's Brad Van Meter at State Farm in Des Moines. Call the number on your screen for a free quote and see how Brad can serve you. If you want a better quality snack for game day or any day, check out what they offer at iowasmokehouse.com. Iowa Smokehouse offers a full lineup sure to satisfy you and your family's snacking needs, whether it's thick and tender cuts of beef jerky, flavorful meat sticks, or delicious steak bites, or even ketchup and barbecue sauces. You will never need to look anywhere else. Tasting is believing. Visit iowasmokehouse.com and use code Hawkeyes for 15% off your next order. That's code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com for 15% off your next order. All right. Again, RTI Threads player of the game was Caleb Johnson. Could have been special teams unit. Could have been a number of different players. Could have been Jamari Harris. Played a great game. Lots of great signs today. A couple of interesting things I'd like to point out here just before we move on to our call-in line. Again, our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line is still open. We've got plenty of spots left in the queue, so visit the link in the description down below to join the queue. Got plenty of time left. Cory will be joining here shortly. Actually, both Corys will be joining here shortly. So feel free to hop in the queue, and we'll get to your calls, get to your chats, get to your questions as we move past the 1 hour mark here. Go to the link in the description to join the call-in line. Couple of interesting things from the stat sheet. We talked about just briefly there in that last call, but some things that we didn't quite hit on. Got the play breakdown I thought was very interesting today. 37 runs and 14 passes, and it looked purely like a decision of they can't stop the run, so we're going to keep running. But something to follow through the rest of the season. I don't know exactly what their breakdown is to this point in the year, but certainly a very interesting breakdown. I mean, they've essentially, today at least, essentially abandoned the pass game and leaned into the run game, and it was all Caleb Johnson. We've seen kind of a mix-up of some different backs in there at different points in the season, but at this point, he's getting the vast majority of the carries. Going into the season, we had obviously Caleb Johnson, Kamari Moulton, LaShawn Williams, Terrell Washington, and Jazz Patterson taking carries in camp, certainly, and then throughout the first couple weeks of the season. But today it was Caleb Johnson with 21 carries. Kamari Moulton got 2 carries. One of them was a very nice 16-yard gain in the red zone to get Iowa down to the 2 or 3 yard line. But he only had 2 carries for 19 yards. Terrell Washington came in late. He got 6 carries, but all of them were once the game was well out of hand, if I remember correctly. 6 carries for 17 yards. Caden Weegan had 1 carry on a jet sweep for 11 yards. Jazz Patterson had 3 carries for 10 yards. He did have a couple while the game was in doubt, but really nothing much. It's at this point, it has devolved into Caleb Johnson is going to run the ball for us until Caleb Johnson needs a break. And then when Caleb Johnson's ready to go back in the game, he's going to go back in the game, which is a very different approach than what we saw previously. 37 carries overall for the Hawkeyes, 220 total yards rushing. That includes a 12-yard loss by Cade McNamara on a sack, 2 touchdowns, and the long from Caleb Johnson of 53 yards. And really, besides that game, it felt like a really what oddly seemed like a ho-hum game for Caleb Johnson up to that point, or besides that play. And again, he just keeps doing what he's doing. He's 166 rushing yards, and that includes a 50-yarder. But even on the rest of the plays, if you take out his big play, still had 110 yards on 20 carries. Nothing to sneeze at, something we would have taken at the start of the year. As far as team stats go, Iowa outrushes Washington 220 yards to 117, but Washington outpasses Iowa 266 yards to 108 yards for the Hawkeyes. Washington had 393 total yards, and as we pointed out in that last call, 5 of 15, or maybe the previous call, 5 of 15 on third down, 3 of 6 on fourth down for Washington. Iowa was 5 of 10 on third down, which is a number that I think they'll take. Certainly hope to keep getting better in that category, but critical downs 50% is very good. Interestingly enough, The Hawkeyes complete 8 passes for an average of 7.7 yards per pass. Washington completes 34 passes for 5.3 yards per pass. So it really shows you Washington was not testing the Iowa defense deep a whole lot. We've talked about what teams on the Iowa schedule will test the secondary and test the safeties deep, and Washington was not that team today. 5 yards a catch for them. 30 rushing attempts for Washington. Iowa's 37. Iowa averages 5.9 yards per rush to Washington's 4.2. And of course, the two stats of the game were the critical downs, and of course, 2 turnovers to 0. Washington with 1 fumble and 1 interception. Iowa with no turnovers, played a clean game. Not too many penalties, 1 or 2 here and there, but nothing that really killed any meaningful drives. Washington did have 35 minutes of possession, a lot of that coming early to a 7-minute drive and what was essentially an 8-minute drive. So beyond that, maybe not quite as dominant in terms of possession, but still Iowa didn't have the ball a whole lot, and frankly, they didn't need to have the ball a whole lot to get this game done. Askabum says, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Richmond and Graves did a great job too. I would agree with that. Offensive line was okay in pass protection. I thought they were average, not great, not bad, but they were really good in run blocking. There were a lot of plays that were blocked for 5, 6, 7 yards. So thank you for the super chat, Askabum. Nathan Mertz says, Leicester is really good. We have open receivers in every game. Love the pass trees, love the play calls. Drinking me some Leicester 8. I think the fan base is coming around to where you're at, Nathan. I don't know that we're all fully bought in yet, but I think early returns are very good. I'll check in when Cory gets here on what some of the total yardage numbers are looking like, where they're ranking there, where they're ranking in yards per play, all that kind of good stuff. But certainly I think the fan base is coming around to where you're at, and I'm definitely coming around to where you're at too. This is not the same offense that it was last year. This is not the same offense it was even in 2021. So very, very good to see. Dude Liberty says, Jazz Patterson hits the line so hard he may miss some holes, but he won't lose you yards. Completely agree. Jazz Patterson is your go-to back if you're looking to not lose yards. That dude is flying through the line of scrimmage. And I'd love to know some numbers on that, but I don't know that he's had a negative play all year, and I don't remember too many from last year. So certainly a great second option if you're gonna have a second back that comes in and doesn't lose yardage when the other guy's out. That's a good quality to have. Mitch Jasper says, I just feel like Cade does nothing impressive, still miss some easy throws. I agree. He didn't do a whole lot that was impressive, and he had a really frustrating throw to Reese Vanderzee. Again, I'm going to keep going back to that because that was a throw that a Big Ten quarterback of a team that still has Big Ten championship aspirations. I know Cory said that, and some people don't want to hear it, but it's a throw that a Big Ten championship quarterback has to be able to make, and he right now has not shown the ability to make any kind of deep throws. So I just question when they get to Ohio State or Oregon, if they were to run the table and go to the Big Ten title game, what they'd be able to do, because he just can't take the top off of any defense. So yeah, just we'll have to see how it develops. But yeah, he did not do too much that was impressive to me either. LH, if we run the table, is there a chance that we make the playoffs? Well, I've got some information here. I don't know if I want to share it just yet because I would like to hear Cory's reaction to it once he gets here. But the ESPN FPI odds for Iowa to win each game have been updated after last week. And last week they were a little bit more bleak, a lot of 55, 60% chances to win. The Maryland game on the road at Maryland, they were actually underdogs in that game. I think FPI had them at a 48% chance to win. All of those games, except for the Maryland game, are now over a 60% chance for Iowa to win. Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, UCLA, they're all the next 4 games consecutive on their schedule. Actually, they're all heavy favorites. And then after that, they have Maryland and Nebraska, who they're both basically 60-40 favorites to beat. So very, very heavy favorites in essentially every game the rest of the season. And I've got some college football playoff odds, chances to win out, stuff that we'll talk about with Cory once he gets here. Again, Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We're going to get back to it here in just a second. The link is in the description of the video. Please, in fact, I will even copy and paste it in the chat here. So if you can't find it, there we are. It should be in the chat there. Just posted it under from the Hawkeye of the Storm account. So if you need to get in the call-in line to talk to us, whether it's talk to me or to Cory once he gets here, the link is in the description. All right, let's get to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line again. We got Cory joining us. Cory, how we doing? Are you on your way back from the game?
Yeah, I'm totally busted. I was in search of Chick-fil-A, and my map app said go right, and I saw a sign that said go left for Chick-fil-A, and I followed my map app, which was just an epic fail. I'm next to the John Deere World headquarters. That's a bonus as a Hawkeye fan, but no Chick-fil-A, and I'm just getting gas. So, because I'm on empty, but that's not my priority. My priority was finding this Chick-fil-A. I was so excited. I've lost my voice, but three things. I absolutely love the screen pass to Caleb Johnson. That is a weapon for these fast defenses that over pursue, and it just gave me, I mean, it's not identical to Akram Wadley. I think he was very special, but it's an element that I've been waiting for. I think we may have even brought it up in prior shows, but just really excited about that. And secondly, I have never, ever, and I wish Don was here because I'd like to present this question. I thought I introduced the question prior, but I've never seen an offensive line run block so effectively, yet almost be far below average at best in the pass blocking. I just want to ask Don, I mean, what has he ever seen something like this? This just doesn't seem, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, how can you have, I mean, these guys were elite today in the run blocking. I mean, I was in the stands. I didn't see it on TV. I didn't see it on replay, but they seemed, I mean, this was a special group today, run blocking. Pass blocking, what are we doing? I don't understand.
Yeah. I said this earlier in the show, and we'll get Cory's thoughts on this too, because he's talked about this throughout the season with Coach Don. But like the number of plays that they block for 4, 5, 6 yards now versus the last couple of years. Last couple of years, there were probably, I would venture to say, 35% of run plays that were blocked for like 1 or 2 yards. And then whatever the back got on top of that was what the back got on top of that. This year, those plays that were blocked for 1 are now blocked for 4, 5, and 6. And then Caleb's getting more than that because he's experienced tremendous personal growth as a player. But like you're saying, the pass protection, and it's amplified. The funny thing is it's amplified because of Cade, like because he's not super mobile, because he's been injured, all this stuff. But still, and I actually think he did a nice job twice of evading sacks where he was spinning out of sacks that he would not have spun out of last year in the beginning of the season when he was kind of had that quad injury. But man, like you're right. The difference between those two, between the pass protection and between the run blocking, could not be more stark, especially watching the game today in particular. I mean, there certainly Minnesota was similar. Some of the other games, I'm sure we could go back and see the same kind of thing, but man, it was obvious today.
And you would think that an offensive line that's performing at that level with respect to run blocking would be equally or close to as effective in pass blocking. It's just shocking. I help me understand, because but that said, I'm going to share with you, and this may become maybe a surprise, but my RTI threads, Iowa Hawkeye fan of the game, and actually fan of the season, is Cory Brada, because all the doubters, all the naysayers, and he's sitting here talking about Iowa could potentially run the table, and everybody's calling his bluff. Everybody's like vomiting when he says it, and there's this undying positivity inside of his. I mean, he's just convicted on this. He's been saying it, and I tell you, I'm buying in, Cory. I'm buying in. I just this game was a statement, and I think these guys they want to win. They don't want to. They're tired of losing already. They're not going to sit here and take these losses. And I see the fight in these guys now. That said, a buddy of mine's like, came up from St. Louis. He hadn't been to Kinnick in 25 years. Sorry, I almost got hit by a Dodge truck.
Make sure you're safe.
But buddy of mine came up. He said, I haven't been here since Hayden Fry left. And he said, Cory, he told me, he says, I just went to a University of Missouri game that was like a big game. He says, Missouri does not hold a candle to the electricity in Kinnick. He's like, this is fantastic. And
that's on the SEC fans that continue to mock us on Twitter whenever we say Kinnick is a top 10 environment in college football, by the way.
He said it's not even close. Kinnick totally smokes Missouri. It's not even, there's no competition. I think he's been to a game this year, and he's been to games previous years. But I'll just, he's of your school of thought. They need to get Sullivan in there, and not on the 20. Get him in there on the 30 or the 40. But then Sullivan had that little fumble, whatever that was, the exchange, whatever the problem was. We almost turned it over.
That really hurt his chances, I think, of getting on the field the rest of the year, because that was a terrible decision, and I do not think Kirk is going to stand for stuff like that. Especially, in the red zone of all places to have that happen. All right, Cory, I'm gonna have to let you go just to keep you safe, and also because I've got Mr. Brada in the chat. But go Hawks! Thanks for calling in.
Go Hawks!
Yep. All right. Well, joining our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, the one you've been waiting for, the one, the only.
Yep.
Mr. Cory Brada.
They've all been waiting for me, Kyle. That's what it is. They've all been waiting for me.
They've been waiting 80 minutes for this.
Real quick, let's not paint that decision by Sullivan like, that just dooms him for the rest of the season, because Cade's made a couple of decisions this year that are right on par with that. And we don't know, because first of all, Fox camera crew is horrible. We don't really know what happened on the play. Was it a bad snap? Was it just a fumbled snap by Sullivan? And I actually think it was a forward pass. I'm not saying it's a smart play, but I'd like to go back and watch that again. And I thought the Fox camera crew was horrible. And how about continuously, and it's not just Fox, NBC's done it, CBS has done it. These networks, it seems like more and more are going to commercial breaks on critical replay reviews.
Yes, it drives me nuts. On the field goal they did it, on that fumble they did it. What was it? There was one other play they did it. What? I'm missing something. There was one more.
I've got it written down here. So let's see. Replay review. Caleb Johnson's near fumble. They didn't call it a fumble in the field, but it was clearly recovered by Washington in that first quarter. And keep in mind, the first quarter was really close.
Did you think that was a fumble, by the way? What did you think of that review?
Well, again, I didn't get to see it until after the fact. They just show it real quickly. So, honestly, on replay, I thought it probably was a fumble, but I agreed with what
I did too.
I agreed with what the crew said, and that is the fact that it was called no fumble on the field. It was going to stand. Even though, Kyle, you've heard me say this, I believe college football officials, and Tim O'Day is not a guy Iowa fans like very much. But it seems to me that college football officials, more often than not, they tend to go with their gut.
Yeah.
And at times, oftentimes, to me, if you're going by the letter of the law, and we've got a caller on our phone line, so hang tight, caller. But if you're going by the letter of the law, it has to be conclusive. But more often than not, you have situations where they're just saying, hey, what do we think here based on replay? And it's supposed to be, is it conclusive? Frankly, I thought the overturn there in the fourth quarter against the Washington receiver was a horrible call. I don't think there's no way you can tell me conclusively that young man did not cross the pylon.
Yeah.
There's no way you can see that from the angle that we have. And if you have an issue with it, let's get a pylon camera. The NFL does it. Let's get pylon cams in Kinnick. But there's no way you can say the ball was not over the goal line because you can't tell. There's no way that should have been overturned.
Unless the only thing I'll say is sometimes they do have different camera angles in the booth, don't they?
Well, based on the angles we saw, based on
what we saw, I agree. Unless they had a different angle that we didn't have.
Well, why would they have a different angle than we can see on?
I don't know. I've heard commentators say that across years of football, like that they have an angle we don't have.
I honestly didn't think this was the officials' best day, and I thought Ohio State, you're not going to get a real great whistle in Columbus, but I thought today, given the circumstances in Kinnick, it was not the officials' best day. No. And, that goes back to the first drive. I thought they let a lot slide that first quarter, tighten things up in the third. You have the field goal controversy, which I'm anxious to get Coach Patterson's take on. But honestly, like both of those kicks for Drew Stevens and for the Washington kicker
were both iffy.
Yeah. Neither one of them should have counted. If you're going by the letter of the law, based on the angles we saw, again, unless there's no angle right underneath the field goal sticks because they can't review it anyways. So lots of things to get to as it relates to officiating, but I do believe that both of those kicks should have not counted and they would have canceled each other out.
Yeah. I'm curious too to get your thoughts on this. So when Kirk challenged, James pointed this out partially. I had the question written down for you as well, but James pointed out he pointed out one thing and I had one thing to add. So number one, the challenge inside 2 minutes in the half. Are they allowed to challenge inside the 2 minute mark of the first half now? Is that, I can't remember the exact wording of that rule.
So my understanding is that you're not. That's my understanding. However, he didn't challenge. So like Fox threw the challenge diagram or logo up there, right? The graphic. They threw the challenge graphic up there because I'm guessing that Kirk threw the challenge flag. But there's clearly misinformation there, right? Like you can't even challenge that play.
Yeah.
And that's what I think there was misses on a number of fronts from officiating perspective. If I'm an official in that situation, first of all, you know exactly why the crowd's upset right off the bat. The players were upset. The crowd was upset. So if I'm the officiating crew, I'm going right over to Kirk Ferentz and I'm making it clear to him, okay, we understand you may not be happier, but we cannot look at this.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, first of all, you avoid the situation that they ended up having, and that is Kirk throws a challenge flag. The crowd believes at that moment that they're going to review it, and then you have to go out and explain why you can't review it. Like you avoid that by just making it clear to the head coach it's not reviewable. Now, someone would say maybe Kirk Ferentz should know that it's not reviewable. But, again, he's not an official, and that's what the officials are there for. So I don't know. That's a good question. Can you review under 2 minutes? Of course, they had a change this year with the 2 minute warning, which is new to the game. So maybe that has changed. We are supposed to assume that the officials are going to review everything inside of 2 minutes and whistle down if need be. But he wasn't reviewable anyways. James is in the private chat here. James says, then why did we lose a timeout if it wasn't a challenge?
Yeah.
Did they lose a timeout?
Yes, they did. Yeah, because they talked about it when Caleb had the big run. They said now they could use that second timeout, and they lost it on the challenge.
I'm guessing because it stopped the clock. it did stop the clock. By him throwing the flag, it stopped the clock. So you're not going to give him a timeout back because he didn't know the rules.
Yeah.
But that's a good question. I don't know, because the technicalities of that are very interesting. Should he have been charged a challenge for challenging when he's not allowed to, or challenging something that's not reviewable? I don't know. That's a great question. That'd be a better question.
Are we in agreement too? My impression from that situation was Kirk did not know that the ball going over the upright was not reviewable. Was that? I mean, because the ball was clearly. I mean, Kirk was not throwing a challenge flag on whether or not the ball was above the upright. The ball was 3 feet over the upright. It was obvious the ball was over the upright. So he was clear that Kirk didn't know that rule, right?
I guess. I'm surprised.
I don't see how there's another explanation.
Here's what I'll say though, Kyle. I'm surprised if Kirk didn't know that rule. And I say that because one would think, especially with a huge-legged kicker like Drew. Remember, he kicked a 51-yarder last week that went like over one of the sticks. So one would think that
he kicked a 51-yarder this week that would have been good from 63, probably.
Exactly. And that's why they should have kicked the 68-yarder against Iowa State. But I digress.
Right.
LeVar, one would think LeVar, they all got headsets on. LeVar would say right away it's not reviewable. But I don't know. That's a great question. And again, probably one that Don doesn't have the answer to either. But man, I got a lot to get to as well. Why don't we take a quick break, folks? Because Kyle, you're going to hang out for a while with me as well here.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. We're going to take a quick break, folks. We've got a person here on the phone line. We've got a couple of people waiting. If you're new to the show, the number, I'll throw it up here on the bottom of the screen. The phone line and the StreamYard line are both open, both presented by Iowa Smokehouse. Kyle, did we get a chance to plug all of our great sponsors?
Sure did.
Awesome. Well, appreciate that. And we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be right back with more. You're watching Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Again, 515-635-1601 to call in, or click the link in the description below. And you'll also get information about our show with Coach Patterson tomorrow. But again, the number to call in today, 515-635-1601. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Chasmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Chasmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Chasmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at chasmium.com. Chasmium, where sports technology sparks victory.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Ryan Glick, co-founder and CEO of Groove. And if you're a real estate professional, I have something I think you're going to be interested in. We've developed a platform that's transforming the way deals are prospected and managed in the real estate world. With Groove, you can organize real estate data in one place and share real estate deals with just one click. Join other real estate pros and reclaim up to 90% of your time. Head over to letsgroove.com/signup and start your free trial today.
We're back here, Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Coach Don Patterson will be joining me tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central Time. So if you're looking for Coach Patterson, he is actually over at West Point today. He takes a trip out to watch his old Army Knights play, but he'll be with us tomorrow. So certainly tune in, 8 p.m. Central Time, for myself and Coach Patterson as we recap this game and look ahead to the next game on the schedule. And want to take a moment to thank RTI Threads. They've been with us throughout the last couple of seasons. And, of course, our RTI Threads player of the game, as you mentioned earlier, Kyle Caleb Johnson with 21 attempts, 188 total yards, 3 touchdowns. And in spite of the season that Ashton Genty's having over in Boise, this young man, Caleb Johnson, is turning heads. He probably won't get invited to New York, partially because it would be very odd for 2 running backs to get invited there anyways. It's probably happened. I'm not a Heisman guru, but Ashton Genty's just, I mean, his numbers are ridiculous, and his highlight tape is ridiculous, regardless of competition. He's played some good teams. But Caleb Johnson was phenomenal today. You continue to see his versatility. And how about this? I made a note, and I want to bring, there's a number of things I want to bring up tomorrow night. People need to be sure to tune in. But how about the play where Caleb Johnson cuts it back into the first half? You have so much happened there at the end of the first half, but let me find the note. So, where is the note? I had it here. I was thinking.
My note was Coach Patterson's comment last week on the Ohio State run that he said he would love to see. Remember when Caleb was down the left sideline? He said, "I'd love to see Caleb cut back and challenge that defender," and then he finally did this week.
Yeah, exactly. And so they go safe. They go run at the end of the half. There wasn't a lot of time left, but sometimes, especially, I'm all for running Caleb Johnson in those circumstances. Partially, a big part of that is because he's always a threat to make a big play, and he's proven to be the best threat they have at making a big play. So you'd rather keep the ball on the ground in those circumstances anyways. And in that case, he was able to do. Then let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Love listening to you, and I actually have a buddy and I do a Sunday morning recap of our stuff, and just love listening to you, but really love talking Hawkeye football, and most of us are in my group are almost predate Coach Patterson.
Okay, cool. Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate you calling in, supporting the show.
So, yeah, you mentioned Caleb's run at the end of the first half. That was crucial. It was literally an extra 10 to 15 yards. I'm not sure exactly how many yards it was, but it was absolutely critical. And also, the first play of the second half, to me, on the defensive side, mirrored the first play of the offensive side of the ball in the Minnesota game, where we literally did something that almost totally told us what was coming for the rest of the game, and kind of made me feel like the staff, at least, seemed to have in hand something what was going on in the game. And I don't know. It's harder to say on the defensive side of the ball, but we seem to. I don't know if I would say we dropped down or didn't drop down on that first play of Washington's, where we sort of gave up about 12 yards on their pass play, but it was almost a giveaway of, like, we almost knew what was going to happen the rest of the game, and we totally had control of what was going to happen at the rest of the game on the defensive side of the ball. Am I missing something, or am I somehow brilliant and not seeing it, or what? I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about the first play of the second half. I'm trying to remember what that was for Washington. What was the play call?
They had a little quick hitter over the middle, but it was like we dropped our defense. I don't know if we dropped our defensive end, or we sort of weakened that side of the line and sort of almost let it happen. But somehow it looked like, oh, okay, we have this under control, because the rest of the game, they literally, to that side of the ball, they didn't run well. They didn't really do anything to that side in terms of their quick hitters that they were hitting. Just it seemed to me like, whoa, why do we have this? Why do I feel so good about this? The rest of the game, and I really did, and it was the same as that first half, or that first play of the second half of the Minnesota game, where we ran that quick sort of play action where Cade went out to Addison Ostrenga, and I almost like instantly thought, oh, totally under control this second half, and I felt like that in the second half on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the play you're talking about, but I will say this in general. I personally think this game changed on the defensive side after you have the strip sack from Aaron Graves and recovered by, I believe it was Max Llewellyn, and then you have the return from Caden Weegan. I think just the field position impact that those two plays made, and I know one's special teams, one's defense, because the rest of the game, to your point, caller, like the rest of the game, they were getting home on the quarterback, and it just looked different. But every time they got pressure on Will Rogers, it positively affected the play. I don't know that Will Rogers made a play outside of the pocket today. He may have, but more often than not, 95% of the time when he was getting flushed out of the pocket, he was either getting sacked, throwing the ball away, or taking a loss in some fashion. So, yeah, I mean, it just took some time, and that's been the theme, I think, here early this year. I want to go back maybe 2021, where Iowa had this bugaboo of giving up first or second drive touchdowns. And it seemed like they'd kind of recovered from that these past couple of years. And they've started to do that here these last two games. Now, one was against Ohio State. And this is a really good Washington offense. I think we have to give credit where credit is due. Really good tailback, as we talked about pregame. really good quarterback and really good play caller in Jed Fish. But I do think that this was another example of Phil Parker figuring it out. And in this case, they were able to get pressure on Will Rogers with a 4-man rush more often than not. They were very calculated with their blitzes, as they are each and every week. And so you might be right on that. Again, I did go back and look at the play call, but certainly I thought late in that second quarter, things switched when you had the turnover. And I thought Aaron Graves played phenomenal. He could have easily been our player of the game today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. You mentioned Will Rogers. Much like Will Howard, I mean, Will Rogers is a really good quarterback, and I didn't want to say it last week. Will Howard is a really, really darn good quarterback. We didn't exactly lose to a slug last week, and to this week, we didn't exactly hold down some slug. We held down a really, really good quarterback in the second half.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, his numbers are, second in the Big Ten behind kid from Indiana as far as numbers and passing efficiency. I think he was close to 70% through the air before today. And heck, he was, I don't know what his final, I haven't looked at the final box score for Will, but his numbers spoke for themselves in that first half. He was great. And if it wasn't for the pressure, and I know he had at least, Fox brought out how at least one of his starting linemen was out today. But if he has a good line, that's a really difficult team to defend because they do have good wideouts. They lost a lot from last year. I like Jed Fish a lot. I mean, I'm going to make this about Washington, but I think he's going to get it done there, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in this conference.
Well, here's a question in that regard. This is Washington's second trip east. Now, it's not 3 time zones like it was with Rutgers, but my buddy and I have talked about this. Are we going to go back to maybe a regionalization that we've, because this, I just don't see how this goes on long term. Teams going 2 and 3 time zones in the Big Ten. I wonder if we're going to see some kind of a regionalization of, a Big Ten West, maybe even an SEC West, where we just go to the Power Four and say, hey, let's regionalize this thing. You're going to have the big games, but maybe just somehow get to this regional thing, and so you don't have all these cross regional games, and because I don't see how it's going to be working out for the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Oregons long term to go back and forth every year. Do you see that happening?
Well, we'll see what Ohio State does tonight. Teams that have crossed 2 time zones are 1-9 so far this year in the conference, so that is a storyline. Now the money's there. Okay. People who
absolutely.
How do we have the money to travel? Really? We're asking about how do we have money? So that's not the issue. I think from a competitive standpoint, there might be the numbers say so far this year, small sample size, but the numbers indicate that there may be a greater impact on performance. Not that Iowa wouldn't have played well at Washington. We don't know that, but it was a 9 a.m. Seattle time game. So that's a good question.
Yeah, I've done a couple games out there where I'm visiting Seattle to go out to a 9 a.m. game, which is really a noon game in Iowa. And I got to tell you, it ain't fun necessarily.
Yep.
I can't imagine, forget fans, but I can't imagine players doing that long term. And Washington, like I said, has done it twice now in the past 3 weeks, going to Rutgers and then coming to Iowa City. That's got to be a factor that schools are going to look at long term. I can't imagine that they won't.
Well, appreciate you calling in, sir. And like I mentioned a little bit ago, would love to have you call in with Coach Patterson, and I will be live tomorrow at 8 Central.
Oh, great. Thanks, Cory.
Thank
great
you, sir.
Show.
Appreciate the call. All right. Kyle, the chat is all yours. I'm going to let you man the rest of the way. Ask a Bum, thank you for the super chat. Richmond and Graves did a great job today. Thought Aaron Graves, he looked as good as he did week 1 against an FCS opponent, and that's a good sign. Again, there was some attrition there recently with that Washington offensive line, but boy, they put pressure, and a lot of guys. Max Llewellyn played great. Ethan Hurkett made plays. Deontay Craig provided pressure. Aaron Graves. So go down the list. Even Jeremiah Pittman had a big tipped pass. We saw a number of guys get in there in the fourth quarter, which is always good to see. You get a blowout in Big Ten conference play you don't expect, so that was good. We've got none other than Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com, who is logging in here. Tom, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
So, Tom,
how are you guys?
We're doing good. I'm curious to get your reaction from Kirk's press conference. I'm guessing maybe emotional Kirk today with his 200th overall win at Iowa.
it was emotional, Kirk, and he was fighting back tears even in the press conference, and his the post game locker room stuff. Obviously, everybody's seen that on social media. So yeah, you can expect he's going to get pretty emotional. But this was their first time this year. I thought they played the full 60. I thought they played from opening whistle to the end. They played a complete game, and it wasn't like we were going in there after the game going, well, tale of two halves again, Kirk. What do you do with this team? This was a good effort on in all areas. The offense, I thought, played a full 60. The defense played a full 60. Special teams were terrific today, I thought, with restocking early, and then Caden Weegan, really good returns today. I thought the special teams coverage units, they had a blocked field goal. Just all around, every piece kind of contributed today.
Yeah, I mean, I thought this game changed with two plays: the Aaron Graves strip sack, Llewellyn recovery, and then the Weegan punt return. You get short fields on both. I know the one they didn't move the ball a yard, but they got 3 points out of it, and then the second one they converted for a touchdown. What did Kirk at all comment? If there was any weakness today, it was the defense in the first quarter. Will Rogers looked really good, and this is an offense. I mean, people need to realize this is an offense that has produced all season. And Will Rogers was prolific at Mississippi State. We shouldn't be surprised by that. But any comments on maybe some of the early defensive struggles?
Not really. Will Rogers, like you said, I mean, he's thrown for 12,000 yards in his college career. He's really good. He ran a Mike Leach offense. He's just good at dinking and dunking and taking shots. But I kind of suspected that that's how it was going to play out today, because generally what Phil Parker does is he just kind of, that first couple drives, he'll let you do things. He'll just kind of let you meander down the field, and then tighten up around the 20. But then he just makes adjustments, and he's kind of like that anaconda. He just kind of gets you in his vice. And I thought the key really was the defensive line getting pressure on Rogers and getting in his feet. And, Brian Allen and Llewellyn and Herkett and Aaron Graves, all those guys, Deontay Craig, all those guys really I thought, played excellent football. It was probably the best that defensive line has played this year as a collective unit. I don't think they were great against the run. They were okay against the run, but I thought they really made Rodgers uncomfortable as the game went on.
Yeah, and I think the field goal block early, that provides a boost, right? That's hard to do, and this, I'm guessing maybe the topic of the other field goal, the series there at the end of the first half, the kick going over the upright. I think by the letter of the law, Tom, and I knew you were in the press box. I'm sure you've seen the replay. By the letter of the law, I made the statement here a little bit ago. I don't think either kick from the Washington kicker or from Drew Stevens should have counted by the letter of the law. Did Kirk comment on the review that wasn't?
He just said, I just couldn't review it. So that's basically all he said, was just they couldn't review it. And he said he did it because Jay Higgins told him it wasn't good. Swore it wasn't good.
Who was it? Was it somebody in the media asked Kirk earlier this week if Jay Higgins was kind of like a player coach? So I guess that fits in with that.
Jay said, I was watching Castro. Castro was back there even closer, and he was like, it's no good. He was jumping around and pointing at it. So, they thought it was, but it's you can't overturn it. You can't review it. Although I wish they would have the technology to go above the goalposts. Or what is the harm in extending the goalposts another 10 feet in the air?
Correct.
I don't know that there's any harm in it. So why not do it?
Well, again, at least have a camera view. It's very similar to the pylon conversation. I made the statement too, in defense of that young receiver who ended up getting the touchdown anyways. I thought it was a horrible overturn near the end of the game to take the touchdown off the board for Washington, because it was called a touchdown on the field. In my opinion, there's no possible way you can say with a straight face that it was conclusive that he did not cross the goal line. And I don't understand these officials. That's my big
issue right now with officiating is these officials don't seem to be staying true to the principle of only overturning a call when it's conclusive. They just they look at replay and they say, well, it looks like this, but it's supposed to be conclusive. And it's not just, I'm making sure I'm bringing up the Washington play because I'm not just trying to defend Iowa, but I don't know why you can't have a camera view either from above, below, extend the goalposts, one or the other. And then if you extend the goalpost, Tom, to your point, it eliminates the stupidity of saying that it has to completely clear the inside, because more often than not, if you hit the inside of the goalposts, it's going to go through anyways. But the rule states that if it crosses above the upright and it touches any part of that imaginary upright, that it's no good. So anyways, it kind of puts
we could, there's a lot of technology that's available today that somehow, some way, football, which is kind of the sport, the one sport in America that draws the most money, and there's available funds to probably do this. Why do we have chain gangs still? It's stupid. Why do we have that? Why don't we have some sort of technology that we can put in a football to kind of tell us where it's traveling or what point in a line it reaches? That we should be able to tell that easily. If it breaks a plane or something like that, we should be able to tell that with technology that we have available to us today. And yet football just wants to be so antiquated and so old-fashioned and so tradition-filled. There's ways to fix it. We just don't want to fix it. We'd rather just see. I mean, the way guys are kicking today, we'd just rather see balls fly way over high above goalposts and wonder if it was good or not, than try to get it right.
Yeah, and to Drew Stevens' credit, he's done that. Last week was pretty close to being above the upright. He's done that twice on approximately 50-yard field goals. He's kicking above one of the.
I didn't know one of his was close. It's so hard for me to tell up in the press box. So,
Kyle, you saw the same version that I did.
It was very close. I thought Drew's was a little bit more likely to have been good than the Washington one, but I thought
neither one, like by the letter of the law, Drew's I think should have been no good either, because it still would have hit if the upright continued, it would have
hit the inside. Yeah, it would have hit the inside.
So it's a stupid rule and hard to enforce.
I do have a couple of injury updates from Kirk after the game. Hayden Large dealing with an ankle, didn't really play, just couldn't go. Bo Stevens, he was in a walking boot, right ankle injury, so I think that's probably relatively significant. And you saw Tyler Ellsbury get in there. I thought Tyler did a good job today. I always think he does a good job. I think he adds a little bit of oomph to the run game, honestly, just about every time he's out there. I thought he did that last year when he was in there for Logan Jones. I thought he did that today too. He's a tough, hard-nosed kid. And Addison Ostringa was in a sling when we saw him. So I don't know about his availability next week. So when you have Ostringa and Hayden Large kind of out, that does start to impact that tight end, fullback, H-back, whatever you're calling it these days, position a little bit, missing two guys that are two of your better blockers at that position. So just something that we'll have to monitor this week and ask Kirk on Tuesday about Hayden Large in particular and Ostringa. But it didn't, just seeing him in a sling doesn't give you a lot of hope that he's going to be ready for Michigan State.
Yeah.
We saw a heavy dose of Eli Miller today, and now we come back to Johnny Pascuzzi's decision to exit the portal and return to Iowa. Yeah. That was big because that provides experience and depth at a tight end position. He was on the field today playing a lot. Zach Ortworth's early development and Luke Lachey's return as well. And Askabum, thank you for the super chat. That was a good question for Tom. I think we've talked about Tyler Ellsbury, the big guy, and he's filled in. He's, again, the depth that they've developed up front. And I thought the offensive line, they just needed this after last week. That was the biggest thing I was disappointed in last week against Ohio State, Tom. I thought they lost that battle Iowa O-line versus the Ohio State D-line. It wasn't a battle I expected them to lose, and they thoroughly dominated the Huskies on the ground.
Yeah, they did. And they, boy, it's getting to be so pronounced right now. And I'll be curious what happens, with the USC Penn State game. I know that was getting tight, but the Oregon, Ohio State, the Minnesota, UCLA games tonight, it just does. And I think it's going to be something that the conference is going to talk about after the year, is whether you're going West Coast to East Coast or East Coast to West Coast, teams are not performing very well. And you would think that, it's natural. You're on the road, but it's pretty pronounced. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what coaches think about that after the year. And there's really nothing you can do about it.
Should Iowa fans be nervous about their trip to UCLA?
And it's a short week for Iowa that week, too.
Mhm.
Friday. Yeah, Friday game.
It's a Friday night game. So
late start on Friday.
And yeah, it'll be an 8:00 start for Iowa, 6:00 out there. And, the thing about those late games, and I know it because I experience it when I go on the road and cover the team. You're just sort of sitting around there all day, just waiting for this game to start. And it's so boring. It just, you can only, I can't imagine what the guys are like, because it's not like they're going to sit around their hotel room and watch other games a whole lot. They probably got meetings or different things they're trying to do to get themselves ready. But it's just, I like these 11 a.m. games where you just get up and go and you're playing. But I'm sure Washington didn't like it because it's like 9 a.m. for them.
Yeah.
And they don't practice in the morning normally.
Well, Kyle, I have nothing else for Tom. We're going to get Coach Patterson's perspective on all this tomorrow. But anything from you, Kyle, before we let Tom slide?
The only thing I was curious about was if Kirk brought up the Sullivan decision to flip the ball at the end of that play. Did he say anything about that? I'm curious about what
he didn't ask about that one. Boy, that was disaster averted. I mean, I think Washington saved Brendan Sullivan from probably getting it. I'm sure it ended up on the infamous KF note card.
Yeah.
That accumulates things during the game.
In Brendan Sullivan's defense, do we know that was it on him, the botch snap? Do we know he's the one who fumbled it, or was it a bad snap on the part of the center? Because they didn't show a replay on Fox, Tom.
Yeah, it was hard to tell. I think he would just be mad that he tried to do something with it. I think he's probably going to learn. You just fall on the ground. If you're kind of stumbling around, just fall on the ball and just eat it and take the 3 points.
Also, do we know it was a backwards pass? Was it a forward pass? It didn't matter because the knee was down, but do we know?
Yeah, it was backwards. It was definitely backwards. Yes. Yeah, it went backwards.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine, even if it was close, that Kirk would care whether it actually was forward or backward. He would probably just say bad decision.
Correct. Bad decision.
He would just say, just eat it, and we'll take the 3. Yeah. So,
well, Tom, safe travels back to the Quad Cities, and
thanks for having me on, guys.
Hopefully a win against Michigan State.
Yes.
Thanks, Tom. Good stuff from Tom Kakert. Check all his workout and his team over at HawkeyeReport.com, part of the On3 network. How about this, folks? Purdue comeback is on. The Boilermakers were trailing Brett Bielema as Illini 27-3 in the third quarter. They have since made it 27-20, and as I say that, they scored 17 straight points. Now Illinois responds with a 13-yard touchdown score from a pass from Lucas Altmaier, and we're at 34-20, fourth quarter over on FS1.
Penn State too, by the way.
Penn State's back as well, 20-20 now down in LA. It was, I believe it was at 20-3 at one point, USC.
20, either 20-3 or 20-6, yeah.
And so if people want to know about Iowa rooting interest there, root for USC.
Yeah.
Root for USC, folks. I don't like either school, and I don't like either coach or either institution. Root for USC, but Penn State is coming back. That game is in the Coliseum over on CBS. And how about Texas? The Red River rivalry, the Longhorns blowing out Oklahoma right now, 24-3 over on ABC. A lot of games right now. Big week of college football and we'll run through a complete scoreboard update here in a little bit. Let's take a quick moment to give a plug to RTI Threads. Here's a guy I want to bring up to Coach Patterson tomorrow. Zach Lutmer played a lot today on defense. Carson Shire showed out on special teams as always. Jacob Gill, Aaron Graves had a big day. It was a good day for our RTI Threads athletes. Check out all the RTI Threads merch over at rtithreads.com. Deck you, your parents, your kids, your wife, your whatever the case may be, out with our player apparel, courtesy of RTI Threads, and your favorite Hawkeye athletes. Visit www.rtithreads.com. Also, as always, want to take a moment to thank Iowa Smokehouse. If you have not gotten your orders in, what are you waiting for? Tasting is believing with their jerky, their meat sticks, their salsas, their ketchups, their barbecue sauces. It's all amazing, and you can get it sent right to your front door. Great with your favorite bourbon or beer or whatever your drink of choice is on game day. Use the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com for 15% off your order. This is a code exclusive to the show. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order at iowasmokehouse.com. Tasting is believing. And our friend Brad Van Meter down at State Farm, and one of his cohorts in his office, James, was at the James Wiley was down at the game today. Give Brad and his team a call, 515-256-6480 for a quote on your whatever insurance premium you are looking to add or change, whether it be auto, renters, homeowners. I know homeowners insurance is on the minds of a lot of people across the country right now. Give him a call, 515-256-6480, or online at bradvanmeter.com. You can also check out his office. Scamper on into 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. Brad Van Meter down at State Farm. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call line. We've got Pat on hold. Pat, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for taking my call. Two things I was going to say. I do coach track, coach a couple of people, but this was like the perfect game to have after Ohio State because we run into problems. Like we said, we had the love affair for Will Rogers earlier, but this is always the offense that kind of gives Hawkeyes problems. Like they usually come in, carve us up, then we're just kind of sitting there like, what the heck? But from the coaching side of it, it was the best way to have this game because now it just shows the players like, hey, we're all bought in. Like if you believe in what we do, it is very successful. So I think that's probably one of the best things to have for this team for the next 6 games. Because if they keep buying in, we're definitely going to be favored, and we're going to show why we're favored later in the season. Then I don't know if you saw the chat I have. Have you guys talked about the getting rid of the national letter of intent?
That's a great question. I wish I'd seen your comment before we let Tom go. I've not talked about it. I know Tom tweeted out about it earlier today, and this affects so much, but it'll be interesting to get Coach Patterson's perspective on it tomorrow. I have not had the time to read as much as I'd like on this decision, but it sounds like the reason, and as far as timing is concerned, and the reason for the change right now is to prevent situations like what happened at UNLV with their quarterback. That's the overwhelming consensus. Is that fair to say, Pat?
No, that's totally fair. I mean, like NIL ruined everything. Like, what I mean it ruined everything is because now you have kids. So did they sign contracts? Because now, like, what's going to happen? I thought this was going to happen 5 years from now. Was that kids are going to become school employees. And what scares the hell out of me about that is because, wait, so can the schools come and say to a kid, hey, you caught 4 balls instead of 5 balls, so tomorrow we're going to need your tuition paid in full?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, there's legalities with Title IX and whatnot. We've been talking about this for years. Wouldn't you rather players be employees than just players having all the subcontracting power in the world like they do now with NIL? I mean, if you had a salary cap and rules around how players are played and what's in these what are in these contracts, because all these players have agents anyways, wouldn't you rather players be employed and have salary caps involved? I think that'd be a better scenario.
No, I think so too. But like, in my opinion, if you're on full scholarship anyway, I believe you shouldn't get paid. And the only reason why I say this is because when you leave college, you get the biggest advantage in the world of actually collecting your first paycheck and keeping it. That's just how I view it, because that's a major advantage of life if you're not paying your student loans and all that. I know I sound really old school, but it's just like that's a major advantage to have later down the road.
Yeah, I have tended to agree with you through much of my life, but with all the money that's there now, Pat,
Oh
I
yeah,
have a hard time saying the players don't deserve some of that money, and that's just. I mean, the world's not fair, but would you agree with that? Like, that's a lot of money that's going to other people. When
I do agree, but I also agree on the point where everyone says these kids generate a lot, but I also say in the other fair point, these kids wouldn't have the spotlight without the school. So I think it's vice versa that way. But in the end, the kids are the ones that are making millions and millions for the school anyway. But it's also the school giving them that opportunity.
Sure.
But also, too, so I think the amount of progress we've made week to week to week in the offense is starting to show. Like, we did run a couple different pass plays. Like, I love how Lester's developing everyone, too. And he's throwing different receivers in there. And he's showed Cade, obviously, like, hey, man, like, this is your show. Just keep developing. But with that being said forward, is it kind of concerning we don't have a consistent number one?
Number one QB?
No, receiver. Like a guy that's okay, 3rd down and 5, hey, we're going to you.
Man, I think, I don't know what Jacob Gill has done to not label himself as the number one option. Did he have any catches today?
Nope.
That's weird. That's strange. But, I mean, what has Jacob Gill done to not earn that? I don't know, unless something happened in practice this week. Kirk has done nothing but rave about Jacob Gill since he's been here. And frankly, Reese Vanderzee, I thought ever since that week 2 game against Iowa State where he had a drop or two, he's been really good. I think they're in a better position at the top of the receiver room than they ever have been. But I think Jacob Gill is that number one guy, Pat.
Fair to say. And also the last point I got to get to. Mm-hmm. So with the progress, we'll see how we finish the year. I'm definitely hopping on the bandwagon now. We probably will win out. with all that being said, right? Do you think next year we're going to be at a point where we're kind of sit there realizing Caleb Johnson's going to be the missing piece? Because it always happens with Iowa where it's like, man, if we would just had that guy from last year, because he just reminds me so much of Sean Green. I know Sean Green had to leave because of how old he was, but if we would have had him that next year, we probably were going to play for a national title then.
Well, had they had Ricky Stanzi the next year, they may have.
Yeah, if they would have had Ricky Stanzi, they would have been playing for a national title.
Yeah, I mean, they went to overtime without Stanzi with a freshman quarterback in the shoe. But, I mean, it relates to Caleb Johnson. I don't know that next year we're going to be looking back and saying he's the missing piece because they actually are pretty deep there. And they're just losing so much in 2025. And that's the thing. There's going to be a black hole at several positions. And it's going to be the ultimate test on Phil Parker, LeVar Woods, and Kirk Ferentz, assuming all of them are back. Assuming all of those coaches return. Because next year, we thought it was going to be this year, but it wasn't. Because all these guys returned, and the schedule ended up being as favorable as possible because UCLA hired a new coach, Washington hired a new coach, lost all these guys from a national championship team. So it's like they were able to buy one more year, which is good in a sense if you're going to retain everybody because it gives Tim Lester a year with a somewhat favorable schedule. But next year, the schedule becomes a bear. And with that being said, they don't have the COVID years anymore. They're going to have a lot of new starters at linebacker, at DB, at quarterback, at running back, offensive line. I mean, everywhere. Tight end. Everywhere. That's what's crazy about this. Special teams will be the best unit because they bring everybody back. Right? I don't think Drew Stevens is going to leave early for the league. So Breece Dakin, I mean, he had a great day today. How about that young man? But they're losing a lot next year, Pat, as a whole.
But I mean, like, that's the mark of a good program. Like, honestly, what I don't get, Iowa should be a top 15 program all year. I mean, every year. The reason why I just think is of what we have as a program going for us. Like, we have the best facilities. We have the best fans in the world. And two, if we're really good, we're on TV. I just think that now we should start going to get more prospects And everyone's like, why? I'm like, dude, just pay him. Like, what are we $600,000 into Cade?
I don't know how much they're in the Cade.
I'm saying though, but but I'm saying like, give a kid 250 grand. It's like, hey man, come catch balls for us. Hey, come run the ball, come block. Like, we got the money. I think I was a very affluent state. A lot of people don't realize how much money's actually here. And I also get it's hard to go talk to someone like, hey, can you give me $2 million? But why not ask? And two, when Kirk's gone, if we don't go out and get like a top 15 coach, I think we're crazy. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. I was going to ask Pat, but he logged off too soon. You think Pat would give me, if I asked him, would he give me $2 million? I'd be happy to take $2 million from Pat. If
be happy to take $2 million from anybody.
Pat, can I have $2 million? Pat's gone. Pat, are you with us? Pat's pleading the fifth. He don't want to give me $2 million.
No.
Yes, thank you, OS for Hawks, on that USC Penn State update. 3-point lead for the Trojans. And how about this? The table. Will the Hawkeyes run us? What did I say, Kyle? What did I say in my preview this week?
You said it.
I did appreciate, who was it that, not that I've proved myself or anything like that, but who was it that said it here a couple of minutes ago? Your guy, the other Cory.
Yeah, Cory. Yeah,
brought
he
up
was in the first one too. I think James may have mentioned it too.
So let's see. There's a lot to be proven, but I've been on that. I haven't backed down from that prediction. Heck,
well, I've got some stuff for you on that if you don't mind.
Go right.
The ESPN FPI odds have all drastically shifted after today's game.
Well, Maryland also. Hey, it's also after last night's game, after what Maryland did against Northwestern.
Correct. Yeah, Maryland went from 48%. It went from a 48% chance that Iowa wins to a 60% Maryland win, or 60% Iowa win.
Maryland looked horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And I've been saying for a long time, Michigan State is horrible. Now they got to go on the road, but Michigan State's horrible. Northwestern's horrible. Now they've played better these last 2 weeks. And Wisconsin's playing better now. Like they've dominated two teams now. So that all of a sudden looks like the more difficult game.
Wisconsin may be the second hardest game left now.
It could be the hardest. We don't know. I mean, I don't know who would win. Is Wisconsin play Nebraska this year? I don't even know what the schedule looks like.
I don't think so, but I can look.
I don't know who would win that game. Like, I think those two teams might be pretty evenly matched. Wisconsin seems to be coming on at the right time. But in answer to the super chat here, and we do appreciate the super chat, my bold prediction pre Iowa Washington was exactly that. I said, here's my bold prediction. If they win against Washington, they run the table. So,
well, according to ESPN, they've got a 9.2% chance to win out now, and they've got a 5.88% chance now of making the playoff.
Those numbers mean nothing to me, Kyle. You love to go back to the numbers.
Well, okay, so you know what I think the most interesting takeaway of that is? It's not the 9% to win out. It's if they win out in the regular season, they have a 64% chance at the playoff, according to the odds.
Yeah, I don't know that. See, again, I don't know that I agree with that. Like, from a humanistic standpoint, I don't know that listen, what's Iowa's chances of winning in Indy if they win out and go to Indy?
20%.
So in other words, ESPN's basically saying that they like Iowa's chances if they don't get to Indy. If they go 10-2, lose out on a tiebreaker, they're like Iowa's chances. So what you're telling me is that Iowa fans should be rooting for this team to win out and not go to Indy.
Exactly. Yeah, they should be rooting for Iowa to finish third in the Big Ten.
I think that's first of all, in a sense, I almost think it's a loser's mentality.
Oh, it is 100%. Yeah.
I just think that's a loser. I just think you want to play in Indy, and because what's better, getting a chance to play yourself into Indy, or kind of not backing your way by backing your way into the playoff by going 10. I don't think they get in at 10-2. Now teams are getting beat up at the top. There's more attrition at the top of the.
Well, this is part of it. There's like Ole Miss has taken losses or taken a loss. Mizzou took a bad loss. Notre Dame took a bad loss. Like Alabama took a horrible loss. Like there've been 7 or 8 teams that I think had playoff aspirations that have taken bad losses.
And Iowa has not had a bad loss. The problem is they don't have a marquee win, and they're not going to have a marquee win. They don't have an opportunity at a marquee win. That's the problem I see.
No, Indy is their only potential chance at a marquee win.
Had they beaten Iowa State and 11-1, I'd be all for it. But even I think
that would be a different debate. We're not gonna be in that position. But would 11-2 get you there? Sure. Even with a loss in Indy, it would get you there at 11-2. But like I say, 10-2, no Indy. I don't know. ESPN must think they have a good shot. But wouldn't that stink if they go 10-2, miss out on Indy, and then not get selected in the playoff? That would suck, Kyle. That would leave like a gigantic hole. And there's so many guys that are going to be gone after this season.
Be incredibly deflating.
It would be an incredibly deflating way to enter the postseason, and I'm afraid that might happen. I would much rather go to Indy. I want to go to Indy, Kyle. I've been saying this. I want to go to Indy. That's what I want.
Cory just wants the special treatment. It's not about the game. He just wants the special treatment.
I just want to go to Indy. So that was fun last year. All right, folks. Phone line. We got somebody waiting on hold, and they're next on our phone line, but our StreamYard line is wide open right now. Before we get to our next caller, and the number is 515-635-1601, want to take a special moment to thank Ascent Nutrition. They've been with us for a long, long time. Here is their website. If you're new to the website, you can visit it. The link is actually in our description. It's goascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes, and it's owned by a good friend of mine, Lance Shuttler. And we're thinking about Lance right now, his state of Florida, affected by the hurricanes. But Lance has strong roots. He grew up and was raised here in Iowa, went to school at University of Iowa as well. He's become passionate about just people living healthier lives, helping people to live healthier lives, whether it's through their pine needle extract, their humic and fulvic acid, their coffee. I'm actually waiting on a shipment of their organic coffee right now. They're a proud U.S. company. They go through rigorous third-party testing, so you can trust what you're getting. It's all pure, it's clean, and so many different products to choose from here. They're all their different categories of human health. But the two products we've been highlighting, the humic and fulvic acid and their pine needle extract, they'll help your gut, their energy levels, your brain health, your clarity throughout the day. It's all great, wild harvested, and check it all out. GoAscentNutrition.com. This is the landing page, folks. When you click on that link in our description, against Lance Shuttler of Ascent Nutrition. Thank you to Lance. He's been a big part of what we've been doing. And if you've enjoyed the content, visit his website, because he is as big of a Hawkeye fan as he is a business owner. GoAscentNutrition.com/Hawkeyes. All right, let's go to our next caller. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Who's on the line?
This is Pat. How are you guys doing?
I'm good, Pat. How are you?
Good. Hey, I've been on hold, so I might have missed something, and if I did, I'll just tell me, and we can move on. Back to the challenge on the field goal. For heaven's sakes, you've got a staff of a head coach, coordinators, and additional staff with a payroll of over $10 million, and you don't know that that's not a challengeable call. I mean, that's farcical. Number two, time, down, and distance. If you guys talked about this at the end of the first half, you can tell me you've already talked about it. So Caleb Johnson makes the run. Then they get another first down with 13 seconds to go. I can't remember. I think it was a pass play. Have you guys already talked about this?
No, we haven't talked about it, but you're absolutely right. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, 13 seconds left. First down, so clock stops in college football on a first down to reset the chain.
Spike the ball.
So
spike the ball.
You've got one timeout left.
Spike the ball.
Downs do not matter.
Correct.
Spike the ball.
Correct.
You open up the entire field rather than have to throw a fade into the end zone and then that whatever. I mean, it was a worthless play, that little out route that went incomplete that wouldn't have mattered anyway. The main thing being you had to settle for a 51-yard field goal, which is not a chip shot. Otherwise, spike the ball. You've got a timeout left. You can run two plays. You've got the whole field to work with. It's just a perfunctory part of the game. And the fact that this literally happens every other game, if not every game, it's bizarre land.
Pat,
there are high school teams that dedicate themselves to having one person on the sideline that's just totally zoned in on this. That's what they do. They've got it down. And that you've got this high-paid staff that misses these two things is just, again, bizarre. Now, very happy about the way the team played. They played a whole game. They were solid. Really looked a lot more improved, but I just had to bring that up.
Well,
So,
Pat, let me just
anything
say this
away.
real quick, and I'm going to try to give myself a degree of credit here. Who's been preaching about Iowa's clock and time management for the last 3-4 seasons? I mean,
crazy.
I say it every single
It's
year.
lunacy, Cory. It's lunacy.
I know it is, and it gets pushed under the rug a lot because Iowa wins a lot, and they win in spite of it a lot. But you're absolutely right. I said it when it happened. Why are you calling timeout? Get your butts back up to the line of scrimmage, spike the ball, and conserve the timeout. And how about this? Hey, we're going to forget about this too because it didn't matter in hindsight. They won by 23 points. But how about the fact that Cade McNamara missed a wide-open Reese Vanderzee? This was not perfect from a coaching perspective, from an execution perspective, and that was a pass he's got to be able to make because Reese Vanderzee actually had separation on that play.
Oh, he had 3 yards. So the other thing then, as you're reviewing the game as a coaching staff, as you're looking at the film, to me, this goes back to the culture of Kurt. There is just not self-reflection and going back to the tape and going, okay, that can't happen again. Lester, whoever has got to go, okay, we blew that. So next time that won't happen again. But it goes back to where is the self-reflection to go, man, that was just a bonehead move.
Well,
that's what's weird to me.
For anybody that wonders, then the average football fan may look at that and say, well, that's the offense. That's Tim Lester. Let's make this very clear. I guarantee you Kirk is the one that is in that situation dictating the timeout. I mean, I'm sure he's talking to his coaches, but that's a very much a consistent move. That's the type of thing we've seen over the course of the number of years. Like that's a constant, right? Whether it's Brian, whether it's Tim Lester, is those weird decisions in critical moments with clock, time, score, etc. And I mean, I go back to the Iowa State blunders with the 2-point try, the taking the delay of game at a really weird time. Oftentimes, almost it feels like the motto with clock management and game management, the motto at times appears with Iowa to be whatever the logical thing to do is, do the opposite. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza walks up to the beautiful woman in the cafe and says, "Hi, my name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents." That's exactly what we do.
Yeah,
That's basically the motto as far as game and clock management from my viewpoint.
Yes. And hello, my name is Victoria. But anyway, so if Kurt's not that good at it, then assign somebody else that's good at it. So as soon as Caleb Johnson makes that run, and now you're inside the 30, as soon as he makes that run, Kirk's got to be going, okay, one timeout, there's 35 seconds left. How are we going to play this out? I'm just going to say it. I think it's an intellectual problem.
Well, the only thing
it has to be
from a micro perspective, Pat, the only thing I can say about that play, to be devil's advocate and try to figure out a way to explain it, is perhaps his players weren't hustling their butts down the field fast enough, and Kirk was afraid that they weren't going to get up to the line of scrimmage in time, and so that's why he called the timeout. That's the only way to explain
Possible. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for the show, guys, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, Pat. That's a good call because I kind of forgot about that when it happened, Kyle.
Yeah.
Did you notice it when it happened? Did you bat an eye towards it?
A little bit, but it didn't make my notes, so I didn't think too much of it. But it's a good point. I mean, and you could probably name a game for the last 10 years where something like that's happened.
It was first down, right? So 13 seconds is first down. You can waste the down, go to second and down or second and 10. You still have, at that point, you spike the ball with 12 seconds left or 11 seconds, whatever it is. You can still take a shot, or you can run a regular play because you have a timeout to burn.
Yeah.
The good news is Drew Stevens' kick was good, according to the officials. His kick was good, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Although they should have had the touchdown to Reese Vanderzee because he was open. He broke loose and was open. And that's the other thing about this. This passing game. I'm going to come down a little harder on Cade today. I actually don't think Cade played very well today. I thought there were more misses today than we've seen, and his lack of mobility is starting to get under my skin a little bit because there's times where it's like, just run the ball, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go through a couple of, and I'm going to go through this with Coach Patterson, who's a quarterbacks guru, tomorrow. But let me see if I can find. How about the stupid sack you take in the second quarter? Cade evades the first line of pressure.
Has time to get rid of the ball.
He can do anything he wants. He can get rid of the ball. He can try to find a receiver. What does he do? He takes the sack. I mean, stupid sack. You just don't do it. You have the missed throw toward Reese Vanderzee. And I tell you what, I sure hope that Brendan Sullivan has not found himself in the doghouse because he happened to try to make a play as he's going down on a fumbled snap. It's one play.
Yeah.
It is one play.
I'm
tired of the double standard because Cade McNamara has had a number of plays because he's playing more plays where he's made bad decisions, bad throws, whatever the case may be. I would still like to see Brendan Sullivan in spots. I'm not calling for Cade to be benched. Play him in spots, not just along the goal line, not just on short yardage situations. By the way, they're not. Somebody said earlier, I think before I hopped on here, Kyle, well, I want to see him more than just inside the 20. They're not playing him inside the 20. They're not playing him inside the 15. They're playing him inside the 5.
Yeah.
Correct. Let's go to our next caller. Thank you for calling our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Who's on the line?
This is Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Tony the Tiger. I'm just not on the video. Sorry.
Oh, Tony the Tiger.
How you doing?
Thank you for clarifying. You don't call in for football much, Tony.
I don't, and I was listening, and I heard the caller Pat talking about the NIL, and I just wanted to add a point or two to that, and it was I think that what we're mistaken with is the players should be getting NIL for like autograph sessions, I think, and like commercials and stuff like that instead of the schools just paying them. I think that should have been the original intent of the NIL instead of the Wild Wild West it's turned into.
Sure, and the big part from a legislative standpoint is the fact that the NCAA resisted it so much that it had to go to the Supreme Court, and now the NCAA is helpless and it can't be controlled. That's where all this went wrong. And I guess that's my big thing is if the NCAA had done something to include student athletes in revenue sharing, or if it's just, the NCAA initiating NIL and having it not, initiated by the courts, we could have more structure to where we're at right now. But that's not what happened.
Yeah, and that's just they dropped the ball like they do on almost everything else. And I guess, we're here and someone's got to clean up the mess, and hopefully it gets resolved, because otherwise, if it just keeps going on the way it is, I think we're just going to see more and more of a divide between the haves and the have-nots, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing that. And just so everybody's aware, USC now up 30-23, 5 minutes to go on Penn State. I wanted to mention that because we're getting down to it over there on CBS. Tony, you're looking forward to the start of basketball season, aren't you?
Yes, I am. It's fully coming up, and I think hopefully, if you're still right, we'll be able to see each other both twice for those Sioux Fall games. So.
Yeah, we'll see you up in Sioux Falls. That'll be fun, and we'll get our favorite commentators on for. This is the busiest time of the year, right? We enter October, November, where we start getting into basketball, overlapping with football. But it's a great time of year, nonetheless. So, Tony, anything else before I let you slide?
And it sounds like we're having both the men's and women's this year for some of the games for basketball.
100%, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be here. We'll be here throughout the year. Yep.
Sounds good. And I did listen to you, and I agree with you. I think we run the table.
Okay. Tony said it. Tony the Tiger. Thank you, Tony.
Bet on it. Have a good one, Cory. Thank you,
sir. Good stuff. I haven't heard from Tony in a while. Basketball's right around the corner, though. And Illinois, 40-28 is the score there. Why don't we take this moment to we got James here next on the call-in line. Let's give everybody a scoreboard update. First of all, Red River rivalry, Texas leading Oklahoma 27-3 fourth quarter. So that game looks like it's all but done. 7 minutes to go there. USC with the ball. Let me make sure they're not kicking off. No, they are kicking off. So they just scored. They broke the 23-23 tie. So Penn State will get the ball with 6 minutes to go fourth quarter. How about this? Notre Dame 42-7 blowout over Stanford, but that game is in a delay. I'm assuming that's rain related or lightning related. Pitt and Cal in a close contest, 17-15, 2-minute warning there. Illinois, Purdue, 40-28 Illini. 5 minutes to go in the fourth. Purdue with the ball. They need points in a hurry. Virginia and Louisville, 20-17 late fourth quarter. Cincinnati leading UCF 19-13 fourth quarter. How is UCF playing that game? I'm assuming they're
where they were relocated. I think I don't know where, but I saw something about them being relocated.
This says FBC Mortgage Stadium. That's Orlando, isn't it? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Maybe not. Maybe that might not be accurate. And let's see here. Arizona BYU, the Cougars leading that one 27-10. And how about Joey Labus? Let's get a Labus update. Should we get a Labus update?
Well, I already had my Spencer Petras update pulled up from last night.
Joey Labus is splitting time with Tyler Jefferson. Labus is 6 of 9 for 36 yards, 4 yards per attempt.
Spencer Petras, 41 of 59 pass attempts last night. That's more than he threw all season at Iowa. 461 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Did have 3 picks, but
former Iowa DB Brendan Diaz-Fernandez has 1 tackle for the Chippewas today. So good on Brendan, good kid, and he is playing alongside his former teammate Joe Labus. A couple of games that went final already today. How about Alabama squeaking by against the Gamecocks, 27-25. Clemson over Wake Forest, 49-14. Mizzou blowing out UMass 45-3. Wisconsin, this is a team on Iowa's schedule coming up, 42-7 at Rutgers. So Wisconsin coming on strong at the right time. And they improved to 4-2. Georgia Tech over Mac Brown's Tar Heels, 41-34. Tennessee and Florida still to come tonight. Wazoo and Fresno State tonight. And a couple of other games of note. Oregon and Ohio State from Eugene. Ole Miss LSU. That's a big SEC showdown. Vandy and Kentucky. That'll be SEC Network. The Cyclones at West Virginia on Fox. Syracuse, that's Kyle McCord and the Qs against the Wolfpack of NC State. Minnesota UCLA also tonight. Should be an interesting one. And then Deion Sanders playing host to, you notice how I just call his whole team Deion Sanders? The team doesn't exist. It's just Deion Sanders playing host to Kansas State.
Sanders University.
Ashton Genty, he and his Broncos are in Hawaii, on Hawaii, the island of Hawaii. They'll play late tonight, 10 p.m. Central Time. And then, of course, last night, folks, Maryland falling to Northwestern 37-10. Spencer Petras, how about his numbers yesterday? Kyle mentioned them, but 41 of 59, really good numbers. They threw 3 picks. So his QBR wasn't very good. 461 yards, and they got, well, I shouldn't say blown out. They lost by 16, 50-34. And then Arizona State with the upset over Utah late last night. And that's really all that's notable. Deuce Hogan, in case people didn't know this, Deuce Hogan is projected to be out for the season with a broken collarbone. So his Aggies of New Mexico State did lose this week, but Deuce not playing. And what's the latest on Deacon Hill? Do we know, Kyle?
I don't, but we can find it. Did you see the end of the Alabama game? Did you see how they hung on at the end?
No, I have not watched. No.
So SC scored and had a chance to go for 2 to tie the game and failed the 2-point conversion, but then Alabama gave up the onside kick and SC recovered the onside kick. And then the quarterback they got to 3rd down and long, and the quarterback basically just chucked the ball up in the air for grabs, and it just fell right to a Alabama defender who was not within 10 yards of a receiver. But Alabama gave up the drive. The game, it was like a 60-yard or 55-yard touchdown pass that they thought could tie the game. They failed the 2-point conversion, but then gave up the onside kick.
Well, Alabama's playoff lives are on life support if they drop another game against a perceived to be bad team.
Well, they still play They still play Texas and LSU, don't they?
Yeah, they got opportunities of great wins, but how does the committee weigh those great wins versus?
They can also lose both of those games and be out for good.
Just lose and then play their way out that way. Utah Tech has not played yet. By the way, they're 0-6. They play at Tarleton, and Tarleton State, not to be confused with Carlton Banks. That game is tonight at 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So
I didn't even get a laugh out of Kyle. That's hilarious. Do
You
you even
can,
know who Carlton Banks is? Did you ever watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
No.
You didn't watch Fresh Prince of? I'm sorry. Let's not get upset. On the show. This is a place of love. Let's go to our next caller. We've got our Iowa Smokehouse line, and James is on our line. James, welcome back.
First off, your question, UCF is playing at home. I don't know how they're playing at home, but they are playing at home. I don't know
Orlando's
how,
inland
but
ways, but yeah.
No, that's it for such a question. Second off, I'll give you Desmond Hudson update today. UNI has been struggling. They're changing quarterbacks. They don't know who the quarterback is, but he did go 4 for 94. So 4 receptions, 94 yards today. So not a bad day for him.
Very happy for Desmond. Yeah, that's a good 9. He
But
today.
no, they can't do nothing offense. They're trying to figure out they're trying to run an air raid system, but they ain't got the quarterbacks to run an air raid system. So it's kind of clashing, if that makes sense. Like they don't really have the quarterbacks who can run it, but Mark Farley wants to run an air raid system, so it's not really working very well. But
just to clarify, I don't believe Carson May has played at all at Abilene, right?
Did he?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
He played Central Arkansas last week.
Maybe one game. Yeah.
No, I don't think he's played at all.
No.
And they played North Alabama tonight,
But yeah, I was on earlier, obviously talking about the whole under the 2-minute like challenge and stuff. I heard Kyle earlier talking about it. But the one question I have is on the goal line. We ran the one I'm talking about is I think the one that ended up being a fumble. I'm not sure which one it was. Yeah, it was the one that ended up being not the fumble, but ended up almost being the fumble. Where we ran 3 straight plays in the same spot, back to back to back.
Yeah.
And it's like obviously that's not gonna work. If it didn't work the first 2 times, what makes you think it's gonna work the third time? I would like to see them at least maybe pitch something out and try to maybe get the defense flowing out instead of running the same spot 3 straight times.
You're talking about the goal line?
Yeah, and then he almost fumbled it on the third down play. But
let's not forget what happened prior to that. Whether it's on Brendan Sullivan, it's on Kirk. They have to call a timeout after they called the timeout, and they gave away the fact that they were actually throwing. It was a designed throw for Sullivan, and then I believe they returned with a run. So they showed pass on 2nd and goal, then they run because they showed pass, kind of like the punt fake last week. They can't do, I don't know if they can't do that. Obviously, that's not necessarily the case, but they don't show it, end up going with pass. They go run, and then 3rd down, they have the So,
I mean, yeah, maybe it would change it, but to me, I just was frustrated why they ran 3 straight plays. They ran the first down play. I mean, they ran like 2 straight plays in the same spot or 3 straight plays in the same spot and it didn't do nothing. I'm like, why are we keep running the same spot if it's not doing nothing? I would like to see them maybe do a toss or something to try to get guys outside and maybe get blockers going outside, but they just kept trying to hit the same spot all the time. But
by the way, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, I got a lot. Like, I haven't even scratched the surface of all of my game notes today, and I'm saving some of these for the show with Don tomorrow. I got so many games. Because it was a wild game, and many were good. There's some games that are just really boring. This was not a boring game. There was a lot that went on today.
No, it definitely was a lot. But I wanted to get your opinion on a couple of things. Obviously, I'll call in tomorrow, too, because I got nothing going on. But, Cory, what's your thought on them not putting Sullivan in when they got in the 10-yard line on the last drive, right? So they got to the 10 and they left Cade in. Do you think that was because Sully almost fumbled, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. I have to go back and track when they have inserted Sullivan since the.
Because I think maybe if they got the first down, they might have put him in.
They have
because they still need to get the first down.
They have inserted Sullivan outside the 10. I know that.
Yeah,
they've done that before, but that's why I'm like, I hope that he's not somehow in the doghouse because of that one play. Now,
well, it's also a bad look if he gets in the doghouse though, and you have a quarterback who made three turnovers last week and you didn't do nothing about it. I feel like that's the bad look thing. And I get he's the backup quarterback, but it's also that's the thing where Kirk's always like, "Oh, I don't want turnovers. I don't want turnovers. I don't want turnovers." Yet the starters will turn. Not saying Cade does this, right? But you know it's happened in the past where the starter would turn the ball over a lot. He won't do anything, and then the backup turns the ball over, and they go straight to the doghouse. It makes no sense why he would do it with the backup, and then he's leading with the starters.
Well,
and at that one
position,
when he says it's a big thing.
Here's another room for complaint here. Why is Cade McNamara in the game when they're up 27 points in the 4th?
Yeah, I told Kyle that too. I said on that last drive, the drive before the last one, it should have been Sully.
They wait too long consistently. They consistently wait way too long. Someone needs to just sit down with Kirk and say, look, we get it. You're in your 60s, but you wait too long to do this.
Mhm.
Just because he's won 200 games doesn't mean that he doesn't have faulty
Well,
reasoning.
that also
I think that's
could be the reason Sullivan, and I'm not giving Sullivan the credit, he shouldn't have made that play anyways, but Sullivan doesn't get as many snaps. So sometimes when you don't get as many snaps, or you don't play a situation where you should play like that, sometimes you try to overdo things,
You can't judge a guy by 1 or 2 plays.
Yeah, that's what I'm
he's
saying,
made
though.
good plays around the goal line
Yeah.
in a short yardage situation. So that
No,
one play
definitely
is
has. Definitely has, and I agree with that. But I'm saying, like, I don't know if maybe him not going in those situations is in his head, like, okay, I got to try to be better in these situations. He was trying to do too much on that play because he was trying to be better in those situations, if that makes sense. I don't know if maybe that's the case because he's like, oh, I have to try to make as many plays as I can when I get in because I'm not getting in when we're blowing two people out when I feel like I should be getting in, if that makes sense.
Right. No, I totally agree with you, James. And the game management stuff and the quarterback stuff at the end of games during garbage time, all that is just that's not going to change under Kirk. It's just not. That's how he is, and it defies logic in my opinion. But
No, yeah, I mean, I know it's not going to change. It's just I think we all have a right to be frustrated about it because we know what it can be, and we've seen the injuries hit the quarterbacks and the quarterback behind them not be ready because they haven't played when they should be playing. You know, when they should be getting those reps. We've seen it happen before, so we don't want that to be the case. You know, we want those guys to get as many reps as they can, as possible. And when you're beating a team that much, there's no way a starting quarterback should still be in the game.
Right.
But I'm also happy for Dayton Howard. I know you were a big advocate of Dayton Howard. You know how long you've been an advocate of him, Cory. And
I was an advocate of Dayton Howard?
I mean, like you've been preaching Dayton Howard of like he didn't have no offers. Iowa was the only offer he had. Like Iowa's always believed in him, kind of thing. That's what I mean by that, right? Like you've been saying that for a while, and he finally made it pay off with that touchdown play. And
And we're going to talk about this with Don tomorrow. But great play call, break tendency. They've had him on the field a lot of run situations. They break tendency there, and he's wide open. Great play call, and that time it was a good throw from Cade.
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't. To be honest with you, I think it did get tipped still, but the ball still stayed because it looked like from their camera that the ball might have still got like the defensive lineman might have had his fingers on it, but it still stayed in flight the same way, so it didn't affect anything. But no, it was a good game, obviously, and it's a good win. I just wanted to get your perspective on those couple things, and I'm still trying to figure out the rule if you can challenge them too much or not because I'm so lost. Because if it wasn't a challenge, we shouldn't have lost the timeout. I felt like, but.
I will definitely bring that. Well, you'll call in tomorrow. We'll talk to Don about it because he may have some perspective on it as well, at least from his time coaching.
Yeah, for sure. But it was good to talk to you. It's good to see that we got the win and go Hawks. And this actually, Penn State tied it up. All right, so it's 30-30 in Penn State USC.
Illinois just scored a touchdown and got the onside kick, so they have the ball with a minute left, and it's a 5-point game.
Yeah, so there's a couple of good ones going on right now in the Big Ten, but.
Okay.
Who do you want tonight? Oregon? You want Oregon or Ohio State? The one more thing before I get off. Ohio State?
I want Ohio State to win.
Yeah, that's what I would say too, yeah. All right.
Thanks, James. Real quick, what did you say about why did Illinois, you mean Purdue, recover the onside kick?
Yeah, Purdue recovered the onside kick.
You said Illinois.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no.
Purdue scored and got the onside kick.
Purdue just scored another touchdown.
Oh, my gosh.
41-40.
Oh, my goodness.
It's 41-40 with 46 seconds left.
Oh, dear.
Purdue has taken the lead. Unbelievable.
From down 24.
They were down 27-3 in the third quarter. And in this fourth quarter, what was the score? Let's see here. 27.
They've scored 21 in the fourth and 17 in the third. They've scored 38 points in the second half.
Wow.
38-16 second half so far. Oh my goodness.
Say that again. 38-16. Yeah, 38-16 in favor of Purdue. And they're going to go for 2, right?
Yeah, they'd have to, yeah.
Why don't I have this? I should have this game pulled up. Anyways, we're going to lose viewers because people are going to go turn on FS1. But I'm showing timeout Purdue. What is happening here? Timeout Purdue. Yeah, so I'm assuming that apparently
that's a glitch. Sometimes they do that when there's commercial, but like after a score, Purdue didn't actually call a timeout.
But we got a play stoppage, and they're likely going to go for. Well, they are going to go for. Why wouldn't you go for 2? 41-40, 46 seconds left. So we'll keep our eyes on that game. Again, myself and Coach Patterson tomorrow night, folks, 8 p.m. Central Time. We'll be taking your calls as always. And one final thank you to RTI Threads. Of course, they're sponsoring our player of the game each and every week. but also they're providing awesome NIL purchases, gifts for Hawkeye fans for a number of athletes. Here's their website. This is their NIL, the NIL division of their website. So visit rtithreads.com/NIL or just click on the NIL athletes tab here at the top. And you see all these great athletes, including Cooper DeJean, Jacob Gill, Aaron Graves. But how about some Hawkeye athletes as well, like Zach Lutmer, Peyton Sandfort, Carson Shire, Josh Dix, Owen Freeman, and even Swarm Baseball. All of this can be found over at rtithreads.com. And if you're interested in exploring the merchandise with these authentic, unique logos, there is such a selection, folks. Don't buy your gifts from anywhere else. If you're a Hawkeye fan, you got Hawkeye friends and family, go to RTI Threads, find something that your friend or family member will love. Maybe it's their favorite player or team. Check it all out. rtithreads.com/NIL or just click this NIL athletes tab at the top of the screen.
Purdue 2-point conversion is good.
Yep, Purdue 2-point conversion is successful. And now with 46 seconds left, Illinois will have one chance to try to drive the ball and drive the field and get into field goal range to send that game to overtime. Kyle, is there anything else that you wanted to get to? Comments, anything that we missed? I, of course, apologize in advance. We can't get to everybody's comments. If you threw up a super chat, we try to we prioritize our super chats, but certainly tune in tomorrow night with Coach and I. Anything else, Kyle?
Well, the only other game note I had that I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, and you can bring this up to Coach Patterson tomorrow, but Xavier Wampa on the second punt that Reese Dakin kicked, the 61-yarder, made a good stop, made a good tackle, and he looked like a different player the rest of the game from that point on. I don't know if you noticed that, but not just from an energy perspective, but like on the back line, like he was communicating so much more, like he was shouting at teammates with play recognition and whatever coverage they're running. That's something Iowa needs because he has not played well this season. I think he might even say that. But he finally showed up today and had, I think, 10 or 11 tackles. And sometimes when your safeties have 10 or 11 tackles, it's not a good sign because you're allowing the ball to get to the second level of defense. But it was actually just because he was getting involved in the middle of the field. And I was very happy to see that because I think it's something that we really need for the rest of the season.
And Cohen Intringer played well. He had a big play where he blew through a blocker in that second half. So Xavier Wampa's in a battle with another really good player, and credit to Phil Parker for identifying these kids. Remember, Cohen Intringer was initially committed to Central Michigan. They were able to land him. And I agree, though. I thought Xavier Wampa played well. I thought he missed a tackle early in the game, but made a big play on special teams and then had a couple of bigger plays as the game went on. By the way, Illinois returns it to the 27, and then Luke Altmaier incomplete pass. So we're now at the 27-yard line, and it's second down and 10 with 34 seconds left for Brett Bielema's Illini. Askabum, thank you for the super chat. It says Cade wasn't crapping the bed like this in Michigan. Well, we read the super chats as long as they're appropriate. How about this? Luke Altmaier, 32-yard pass play to Pat Bryant for a first down to the Purdue 41-yard line. They're going to get a shot here at a field goal, Kyle.
Sure will.
Complete pass down to the 41, 28 seconds left for the Illini. And just for reference here, Illinois' kicker is David Olano, who's 2 of 2 on field goals today, 4 of 4 on extra points, and does have a kick from 49 yards today alone. So 28 seconds left. Illinois now at the Purdue 41. Luke Altmaier scrambles back to the line of scrimmage on first down. So now it's second down and 10 at the Purdue 41 with 19 seconds left. And again, I'm following this on the Gamecast. I'm not looking at this. I'm not looking at the live feed here. So again, now hold on a second. Updated here. So this is where you're saying there's sometimes a lag here. Luke Altmaier did not get back to the line of scrimmage. He takes a 7-yard loss. You can't take a sack from the Purdue 41. You're trying to get to field goal range. Horrible sack to take. That means now Illinois is back at the Purdue 48 with 19 seconds left, and now they've got to get at least, you would think, 15 yards to get in comfortable field goal range, or at least 10 yards to even give your guy a shot, although I don't know a lot about Alano. Timeout Illinois, again, with 19 seconds left. It's 2nd down and 17. Again, the score there, 43-40 Purdue at this moment. A couple of plugs here as we await the conclusion of that game. If you're not following the show on Instagram and Twitter /X, you can do that at From the Hawkeye on both platforms. Also, From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. Also, if you have not yet done so, be sure to head over to Amazon, do your Amazon shopping with us. You can just basically bookmark the link, but click the link in our description to Amazon and then shop via our link. All Amazon purchases can be done through our Amazon link, and it benefits the show. And if you have not done so on this note either, be sure you subscribe. Very simple to do that here on YouTube, and you can even turn the little bell on for notifications. Like button, little thumbs up is free, easy to do, and that would help us in the algorithm as well. All right, Purdue now up 43-40, 19 seconds left.
Apparently they're reviewing for a strip sack right now, unless they've confirmed that already.
Oh, they are reviewing for a strip sack. See, here's the problem with just following the game. I don't know what's going on. Are you actually watching the game here?
Yeah, the chat has said that.
Okay, got it. So we'll wait and we'll wait to see what that review tells us. But again, Iowa defeating Washington today, 40-16 inside Kinnick Stadium, in spite of another very modest performance from Cade McNamara, but only 14 pass attempts. I did not think this was his best performance. He did eclipse the 100-yard mark. 8 of 14, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Pass protection has not been great, but honestly, I don't think it's been as bad as some people think. I think some of that could be overlooked based upon just decent quarterback awareness. There have been a couple of times, even the commentators mentioned it today, where it felt like Cade was almost rushing himself and feeling a rush that wasn't there. And he's got to be better. And I thought the last couple of performances, although the numbers wouldn't suggest such, I actually think he's been better with timing. I agree with Tim Lester, but today was not his best day, and would like to see Brendan Sullivan get a shot inside the 20s or even inside the 10s. I mean, between the 10s, not inside, between the 10s. How about Luke Altmaier? Incomplete pass, 3rd and 17. Now 14 seconds to go. It's 3rd and 17. Again, 43-40 Purdue. So now basically, here's 3rd and 17. You got to get at least 10, right? You got to get 10 back to give your field goal kicker a shot. Yeah. Give him a shot to tie this game. What a devastating loss this would be to a top 25 Illinois team that's playing Purdue at home.
Oh, 28-yard completion for Illinois to the Purdue 20 for a first down.
All right, if this goes to overtime, we're just ending the show, and I'm going to go turn on the television. So we'll hang tight here for regulation. 28-yard pass play to Hank Beatty to the Purdue 20 for a first down. 7 seconds left, and now I'm assuming they'll bring out the field goal unit for a potential 38-yard game-tying field goal as we continue to follow this game here in the final moments of this show. Also, if you've not followed our show with our apparel line, you can check out all the merchandise for this show also in our description. Click on the spread shop link in our description. Incomplete pass to Malik Elzy at the 20. So they try to run one play there, do not get a darn thing. And now you've got 2 seconds to go. And now they'll bring out the field goal unit for a 38-yard potential game tying field goal. How do we pass this time?
What time's the show at tomorrow, Cory? The chat's asking.
8 p.m. 8 p.m. Central Time, myself and Coach Patterson, and we'll, of course, have the entire week of college football to be able to wrap up as well, because a couple of big games tonight, several big games, not just Ohio State, Oregon, but Iowa State. That's an interesting game at West Virginia. That'll be a game I have on. And Illinois makes the 38-yard field goal, and we are headed to overtime. 2 seconds left, but I'm assuming the ESPN has not updated their games. Okay, now they have. They have updated their game cast. So it's end of the fourth quarter, 43-43. All right, folks, I will be back with you tomorrow. We want to thank you, Kyle. Thank you for hanging out with us here for the last several hours. Go be with your wife now. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow night, recapping during part 2 of our show, recapping Iowa's big win over the Washington Huskies. Have a great night.